Chair, can you let me know when you're happy to start?
I'm ready to start, Karen, so I am.
Okay, thank you. If I just do the notice of motion.
I think what I'll do, Karen, first, I'll just let the committee know that we talked about it earlier, that the outgoing Andy McKeon on the E&R committee has been replaced by Alderman Derek Hussey, and that will take place from today. And I know Derek is online today, and I would ask Derek to pass on our very best to Alderman McKeon and wish him all the best in the future.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly will do.
Okay, thank you, members. To all members of the Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Environment and Regeneration Committee to be held remotely on Wednesday, the 11th of November at 4 p.m. And I'll take the attendance. Councillor John Boyle. I don't see Councillor Boyle here yet. Councillor Tina Burke. Councillor Sean Carr.
Karen.
Alderman Maurice Devaney. Councillor Angela Dobbins. Councillor Mary Durkin.
Oh, here, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Edwards.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Fleming.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Sure, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Derek Hussey.
Aye.
Councillor Eamon McCann.
Here.
Yeah. Alderman Ryan McCready.
Yes, here, Karen.
Councillor Rory McHugh. I haven't seen Councillor McHugh yet. Alderman David Ramsey. I haven't seen Alderman Ramsey yet either. Chair, I can pick up anyone who comes and joins us in the next few minutes. And members, just before we actually move into pass over to the chair, if I could just please bring in the deputy chair of the committee, Councillor Carhill, who wants to come in for a minute, please.
Thanks, Karen, for that. Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Could I, Deputy Chair of the committee, convey our condolences and deepest sympathy to our Chair, Alderman Devaney, on the sad passing of his mother recently. And just to assure you, Maurice, that you will be in our thoughts and our prayers in the next few days, difficult days for you. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, for that. It's nice to hear those sentiments, and I thank you very much, and I appreciate that coming from you as Chair and on behalf of the committee. And I would just like to put on record that I would like to thank all those who have sent me texts or private messages and other bits and pieces in the passing of my mother on Friday at lunchtime. And I will say, you know, when I had listened to the restrictions and the ongoing crisis at the minute, you know, it is a really, really difficult time when a loved one is bereaved. It's a totally difficult scenario to get through, even the bereaving period, because generally we have wakes, and that's probably 2 days and 2 nights where a lot of people come to visit you and call at the house and call at the home. Would have called at the home of my mother, and you know, passing on condolences. But you know, we are in the times we are. But once again, thank you all very much for the kind words that you have sent me. We'll move on to apologies. Is there any apologies, Karen?
Not that I've received, Chair, so far. I don't think. Chair, do you want to do the webcast notice?
Would you do that for me today, please?
Absolutely. I'd like to remind everyone that's in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live via the Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded only to have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight the request to speak. By participating in the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the privacy notice may be found on the council website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that. And just to remind everyone, when they're not speaking, to keep their mics off, because it throws in a lot of background noise, and it's important to hear what everyone is saying. Have we any declarations of interest? Because if we have, throw them into the chat box, and we will get them picked up there. Or if anybody wants to come in to declare an interest, go ahead. Just before we move on to deputation, Angela Dobbins has intimated here that she wanted to come in. Just come ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, on behalf of the SDLP, I too would like to convey our condolences to yourself. I did try to get in a bit earlier there, but look, sincere, and you're right, it is awful times that we're in, and it is having a bigger effect on people there, but wish you and your family our sincere condolences. Thanks, Martha.
Thank you very much for that, Angela, and to those who put in the group chat once again about condolences. We move on now to our deputation from NI Water, and we have Dr. Stephen Blockwell, Head of Investment Management, and Kieran Nicell, Head of Business and Management Analytics, with us. So we will hand over to them to give us their presentation. You're very welcome.
Thank you for your time today. So, Steve, maybe if you want to take over now and share the video.
Steve, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Right, I'll get started. So share. So just wait for this to come through. That's the joys of technology, it's connecting. So presentation should come up shortly. Okay. Has that come through to you now?
I can see it, Steve. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll start then. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the chairperson, councillors and aldermen for allowing NI Water this opportunity to present this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Blockwell. I'm NI Water's Head of Investment Management in the Asset Delivery Directorate. And I'm joined by Kieran Nicell, who's the Head of Business Analytics at NI Water. So this presentation sets out our current status, our strategic plans going forward, and the funding needed for Northern Ireland, especially in relation to the Derry City and Strabane District Council area. Okay, since we last presented to you almost a year ago on the 13th of November 2019, we've been working at our PC21 business plan, and that's for the funding that NI Water requires going forwards. So I'm really taking this opportunity to remind you about the process and to let you know where we're at. As a regulated business, we plan for and are funded for 6-year cycles, which we call price controls. And the price control process itself is actually quite a lengthy one. It starts with the DFI Minister setting out social and environmental guidance, confirming the NI Executive's objectives for water and sewerage services for that period. The social and environmental guidance is developed with input from key stakeholders, namely the utility regulator, Northern Ireland Water, Northern Ireland Environment Agency, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the NI Consumer Council, and the DFI Water and Drainage Policy Unit. So as such, the guidance sets the prioritisation for both the regulator and NI Water, and that's as to what is included in our business plan for the next 6-year price control period and the level of investment to be provided by the executive. So NI Water requires a detailed or prepares a detailed and costed business plan for the price control period. It's submitted to the utility regulator, who scrutinises the plan and makes sure that it's aligned with the social and environmental guidance, and that it is based on sound evidence, that it is efficient and represents good value for money. So as you can see in this slide, we submitted our business plan on the 31st of January 2020. We received a response from the utility regulator on a draft determination on the 30th of September. Now there was some delay due to the COVID-19. We would have had, if it was normal year, get the response back at the end of June. So we're working through the draft determination, and we're going to provide our response to the utility regulator on the 10th of December. We then agree the plan, or we then receive a final determination from the utility regulator on the 16th of May, and then if we agree the plan with the utility regulator, that is, the company makes a decision on the 11th of May to accept. It is then up to the NI executive to make sure that the adequate allocations are made from Northern Ireland's overall public expenditure budget. So this slide really is to explain NI Water's reliance on the executive for its funding. Now, the company was set up in 2007. It's neither a conventional trading business nor an integrated part of the public sector. It's a government-owned company, a GoCo, and it's required to operate with a commercial ethos, but also required to adhere to the complex rules for a GoCo using non-departmental public body accountability. So this means that the level to which NI Water can invest in its infrastructure is not the result of its commercials and finances, but rather it is set according to what the executive decides to allocate from within its annual Northern Ireland capital budget. And this can differ from the levels determined by the independent utility regulator. So there is no additional capability for increased investment outside of this mechanism. All of NI Water's costs must fall within Northern Ireland's existing annual public expenditure budgets, and this funding model is unique to NI Water, and no other water utility in the UK is required to operate in this way. So just for the avoidance of any doubt, the level to which NI Water can invest in its infrastructure is set according to what the executive decides to allocate, and for many years the executive has not allocated what has been needed. Currently, NI Water is operating within Price Control 15 or PC15, which covers the period 2015 to 2021. So just to refresh memories, the executive's allocation for this period was just 990 million against an identified need by NI Water of 1.7 billion. And that was a need that we could invest efficiently in over that 6-year price control period. So NI Water's need highlighted sewer and wastewater capacity as a key issue that required investment during the period. And the 990 million capital allocation for PC15 has been reduced further through annual public expenditure budget cuts. In line with the social and environmental guidance, NI Water's capital plans to date have prioritised maintaining its existing assets, followed by its treated drinking water infrastructure to ensure that every household, business, hospital and school has a reliable, safe supply of clean drinking water, and then the compliant return of treated sewage and wastewater to the local environment. When capital budgets from the executive fall short of Northern Ireland's needs, it's the investment in sewerage and wastewater capacity and compliance that suffers first. In fact, our PC15 business plan, we set out clear statements highlighting that it had been necessary to defer upgrades to 81 large treatment works, and those are wastewater treatment works, and warned that there would be an increase in the number of sewage systems reaching their capacity during the PC15 period, and that this would result in development at locations across Northern Ireland being constrained. So in contrast to the social and environmental guidance for previous price controls, the guidance for PC21 is a little bit different because it does not set a capital budget for NI Water. And the PC21 business plan submitted back in January this year sets out our capital investment requirement of over 2.2 billion. So this is a significant sum. However, it will not fix everything, but it will make good inroads into improving the capacity issues in our sewage and wastewater infrastructure, enabling much of the new housing and new business needed for economic recovery and future economic growth, and continues to protect our natural environment. Okay, as highlighted in the earlier timeline slide, we've now received the UR's, the Utility Regulator's draft determination. And over the next few months and weeks, we will be examining and analysing their initial views. Now, the UR has called out 3 strategic and linked issues of note in its draft determination document, the first being development constraints. The UR states that during PC21, NI Water will begin to address a lack of capacity in sewage networks and wastewater treatment works. A lack of capacity causes unsatisfactory spills from overflows operating more frequently than they should, and wastewater treatment works that cannot comply with statutory consents issued by NIEA to protect the environment. It impacts on the planned development of housing and industry, which underpins the economy and well-being of our society. And NI Water's PC21 plans will only begin to address current development constraints, and further investment will be required in future price controls. So this presents a wider challenge as to how economic development can be supported while the necessary investment is delivered. So the UR is also calling out the need for increasing capital investment. The outputs NI Water plans to deliver in PC21 will require an increase of 74% compared to PC15, and this will place a further pressure on public expenditure budgets. Without this investment, NI Water will continue to breach statutory environmental obligations, and our society will have to choose between environmental protection and economic development. An increase of investment of this magnitude can only be delivered successfully if there is a commitment to medium-term funding. The utility regulator also highlighted the need for longer-term tariff stability, stating, "We recognise that investment in water and sewerage services network infrastructure is not just for today, but it's also about the longer term." So we are ensuring a greater tariff stability while also providing for NI Water's long-term capital development needs. We will continue to engage with both NI Water and the Department for Infrastructure on long-term sustainable funding issues. So our PC21 business plan will start to address the sewer and wastewater capacity issues resulting from historical underinvestment. So the current scale of wastewater capacity issues is shown in the left-hand map on this slide. The red dots that you can see indicate sewer systems with no capacity left, and the amber dots those with significant capacity issues. Currently, major parts of our cities and over 100 towns have significant wastewater capacity issues, and this could be caused by a lack of capacity at the wastewater treatment works or wastewater pumping stations or the sewer pipes, or indeed any combination of these. So these include 25 of the economic hub towns, which are the main towns, as you know, that councils have identified in their local development plans as centres for future growth. And as per the graph on or the map on the right-hand side, 49 of these 100+ areas are planned to be addressed during PC21, and that will be through significant wastewater capital upgrade projects, each with environmental and capacity issues. So these plans include 12 of the 25 economic hub towns across Northern Ireland. However, during the course of PC21, we expect a further 30+ towns to fall into the capacity issue category. So this means that in 2027, there will still be about 100 areas with capacity issues across Northern Ireland. So the scale of the wastewater capacity issues across the province will realistically take at least 12 years over 2 price control periods to address. So you can see how absolutely imperative it is that adequate investment is secured for PC21 to start to allow us to deliver our infrastructure plan. So it follows that if the capital programme within PC21 is not fully funded by government, then sub-projects cannot be carried out. So the priority of investment is shown using the thermometer on the left-hand side of this slide. So when the executive's capital allocation falls short, the cutbacks start with the wastewater component of NI Water's business, because the provision of safe, clean drinking water and the cost to keep our existing assets working take priority over new capital wastewater projects. If the executive's allocation of capital spend falls short by just 50 million, you can see that 21 of the 49 wastewater projects we have planned will not be carried out and will be deferred to PC27, and then will be subject to the funding for that PC period. If it falls short by 100 million, then 35 of the 49 wastewater projects planned will not be carried out, and again will be deferred to the PC27 period and to the funding that will be provided at that time. So you can see just how significant the executive's capital allocation is in starting to address Northern Ireland sewerage and wastewater capacity issues. One last thought on this side: if the capital allocation for NI Water is kept similar to the PC15 level, then almost no wastewater projects will be able to be progressed during PC21, and they will have to be deferred to the PC27 period. Okay, so given that it'll take more than a decade to address sewer capacity issues across Northern Ireland, we're strongly recommending that developers contemplating potential sites make the earliest possible use of NI Water's pre-development inquiry service. So we are continually analysing our sewer network, and the scale of issues can vary significantly from town to town, and you've got a bit of a snapshot there using a high-level capacity tool of a few towns across the council area. You've got Derry, Londonderry there, Strabane, Newton Stewart, Ploddy, and Castledurg. So what we're encouraging developers to contact us for is to avoid unknowns about future development sites. So we're urging them to contact us as soon as they can in their development process. Okay. So it's important really that we raise awareness of the issues as soon as we can. If we consider the Derry City and Strabane Council area, we have a map here showing the larger wastewater treatment works and their current capacity status. The green circles indicate where there is treatment capacity. And we've got about 18 works there which have capacity. Amber shows works where there's some capacity but they're nearing their limit. And where you have the red, it's indicating that the works are either operating at or above their design capacities or have operational compliance issues. So we have about 78% really of our treatment works with capacity for growth. And just to highlight, I suppose in PC15 we had an investment of upgrading treatment works of about, or wastewater works of about 7.6 million against a total investment of about 35 million in that time. So we work closely with Derry City and Strabane council planners, and we have done regarding the local development plan. We've commented on the preferred options papers and the draft plan strategy. We returned our reconsultation response just last Friday on the plan. So we're familiar with the vision, and that's to make Derry City and Strabane district a thriving, prosperous and sustainable area, planning for balanced and appropriate high quality development whilst protecting our environment and also promoting well-being and equality and opportunity for all. So we also understand your ambitions for promoting economic development by promoting sustainable economic development in an environmentally sensitive manner, reinforcing Derry's role as a hub of the Northwest City region and strengthening cross-border links and opportunities. We also understand your strategy for retail, for advocating the adoption of a town centre first approach, which recognises the key role that Derry City Centre plays in the primary location for retail and other related issues within the region. And we also recognise the role that Strabane Town Centre plays as a key centre in its own catchment. So we acknowledge that the LDP's aims to provide enough land to accommodate and facilitate the provision of approximately 9,000 dwellings and 15,000 jobs and associated services and infrastructure for up to 160,000 people by 2032. So this slide again shows your larger wastewater treatments and their current capacity, but looking forward to PC21 and assuming investments, there are some positive outcomes. The green dots indicate areas that have, or treatment works that have capacity. There are about 19 works that will have capacity. The purple indicates a planned upgrade of the Culmore wastewater treatment works that serves Derry, Londonderry. And you've still got 3 amber works where there are works are nearing capacity issues, but still have some capacity, and then you still have Strabane there, which has got some issues. So you can see that we will be investing 4.7 million in Culmore, and we've got PC21 upgrades planned for sewer networks, particularly Strabane, Shortfalls siphons, which we have in Derry as well, 11.9 million investment there. We've got the Fall Street sewer upgrade. There's Ballinagary Tyrone wastewater pumping station, and also Eglinton Cottage Way. So there's a fair bit of investment going on, assuming we are funded. And we're also looking for a step up as well, which will mean that the total investment will be approximately 100 million in PC21. Okay, so in summary, across Northern Ireland, significant investment is needed for wastewater and water infrastructure. Derry City and Strabane, and indeed all councils' growth plans are impacted. Even with significantly increased investment, the scale of issues in our sewer and wastewater networks will take 2 or more price control periods to be addressed. The level to which NI Water can invest in its infrastructure is set according to what the executive decides to allocate from within its annual Northern Ireland capital budget. There is no additional capability for increased investment outside of this mechanism. The UR's draft determination recognises and calls out 3 key issues. 1, the need to address sewer and wastewater capacity. 2, the need for significantly increased investment from the executive for PC21. And 3, the need for significantly increased investment to be sustained for future price controls. If NI Water's funding continues at a similar level to previous price control periods, then there will be significant constraints on economic growth, likely increased pollution and damage to the environment, and increased risk to the population's health. So we have a plan and we have the skills to deliver it, but NI Water needs to be adequately funded. So I'd like to thank you, Chair, for the opportunity for Kieran and myself to present, and we're now happy to take questions from the chamber.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And our first speaker on the issue is Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can I start by offering our sincere condolences to yourself at this very difficult time on behalf of Sinn Féin. And I want to thank Stephen for the presentation. Stephen, and we appreciate the presentation being circulated this beforehand. It was certainly useful to get a wee read through it, but it's an issue that has been brought to their attention, as you alluded to in previous presentations. And the issue with our sewer network and with our drinking water is something that we all take for granted. It's something that we just assume works, and we don't think too much about it. But we have increasingly been advised that it's under severe pressure. I know our MLA Martina Anderson has met with NI Water CEO and spoke directly with her around the challenges facing challenges arising from the underinvestment. Yeah. And as a party, we would support the call for proper investment to NI Water. I know Martina we've discussed as a party our ambitious plans for the area, and I know we would all have seen the announcement from Carol McEwen only last week in relation to her ambitious plans for housing, and her statement that funding would be ring-fenced allocation for funding to deliver the much needed social homes in Derry and in North and West Belfast. And that's a firm commitment to address the housing need. I know last week we had a presentation from the housing executive, who have told us that of their plans to build 3,000 homes, 3,000 social homes within the next 5 years. Martina has often quoted or used the phrase that there can't be any cranes without drains. And that's something that springs to mind, because we have a housing crisis in Derry. we have a minister who is willing to take the necessary steps to address that housing crisis. But it's deeply concerning. If they learn that might be in jeopardy if the relevant infrastructure isn't in place beforehand. So I would like a bit of, in terms of a question. I know we don't we're awaiting the final determination from the utilities regulator on PC21 at March next year. If that isn't successful, will that have an impact on delivery of housing within the Derry and Strabane council area? Because I note that that there is capacity issues that have been identified already. I know we welcome your contribution to RLDP. I have read the response in relation to the most recent plan strategy. I haven't had the opportunity to read the submission, but I look forward to reading it. But one of the things that did jump out at me and was a bit concerning is that when we're looking at our LDP, we're looking at it in a 12-year time frame, and what jumped out at me is that in terms of bringing the relevant wastewater treatment infrastructure up to the required standard, it's with yourselves, you're looking at the same time frame, and I'm just wondering, are the two of them is there going to be any conflict within them? Is there any potential of our ambitions within our local development plan being curtailed until there's the investment in the wastewater treatment? And just finally, and it's an issue that wasn't included in your presentation, but it would be remiss of us not to raise it as a concern now, is Brexit. And we understand that that there's a lot of chemicals that's used to ensure that our drinking water is safe to drink, and a lot of those chemicals come from Europe. Have we got the security of supply? And if so, post Brexit, and if so, is there any additional cost? Is that putting additional pressures on yourselves? But I just want to finally just thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you, Chair.
What I will do is I'll allow 3 speakers in, and then we can come back and answer those questions then, because there's a few other ones on. So the next speaker in is Alderman Ramsey.
Chair. Yeah, thank you. Just on behalf of the DUP, thank you very much for your report. Once again, emphasising the major issues as you have before going forward. PC21 requires a lot of money, and I would like to make a proposal here today that our council write in support of yourselves in getting the money for this infrastructure. We locally, I mean, our issue is obviously development, and I've been dealing personally with a lot of developers, and we are getting to the stage now where it's too late for pre-development inquiries, because we have issues with capacity on planning that's already in place. That obviously is a major frustration for developers, simply because they have obviously committed to the sites and development. And a 74% increase is required, which, I mean, 100 areas, it's shocking. It's, and as Councillor Jackson said there, you know, there is a major housing need, and already we are facing planning, getting letters from yourselves that the capacity isn't there. So my proposal is that we, as a council, right to local government, supporting everything that you are asking for. And I noticed on the PC15, the green dots, obviously, you know, that's okay at the minute, but they will go to amber at some stage. So the pre-development inquiry, the only question I have is, and I will get in touch with yourselves on one plan and issue later.
Okay.
The only question I have is, would you consider phases where there are potential capacity issues? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Ramsey, for that there. And before I go on to the next speaker, I just want to have noted here that you have made a proposal here. Do we have a seconder for that proposal? I see in the group chat, Alderman McCready has seconded that there. Just before we move on to the next speaker, is there any objections to, are we happy enough that we write to the relevant department or central government regarding funding resources for NI Water to deal with all these issues?
Chair, Councillor Edwards here.
Go ahead, Councillor Edwards.
I was the next speaker anyway, but Chair, is the proposal to write to a particular department, or is it to write to the executive as a whole?
I'm happy enough to send it to the relevant department.
So that would be the Department of Infrastructure?
Yeah.
Does that clarify your, Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I just think, Chair, that as outlined in the presentation there by Stephen Kieran, it's NA executive fund. I think we need to branch out to the wider executive. It's a collective funding from the executive make the decision on funding going to NI Water. I would just like to have it branched out to the wider executive, Chair.
Obviously, Chair, Councillor Ramsey here, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. Thank you.
Happy enough with that, Councillor Edwards? You're next to speak anyway, so we have a proposer and seconder. Just before we move on, is everyone happy with that? Look, I know of people on the list here. If somebody wants to come in, just come in.
Chair, Angela Dobbins.
Go ahead, Angela. Go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, could you just reiterate? Could you just reiterate what the proposal is before we decide? Thank you.
Here, Alderman Ramsey, do you want to come back in just and reiterate the proposal?
Yeah, that we send a letter to local government, the Assembly, supporting NA Water's calls for much needed investment to allow for the future development of homes in our area. Thank you.
Clarify, Angela, for you.
For that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards, you were the next to speak anyway, so go you ahead now.
Thanks for letting me in, Chair. And I do want to thank Kieran and Steve for the presentation, and I'll keep it brief as I come in earlier. I wonder, because Steve and Kieran give some context around current developers in our council area and the impact it's having currently, and are there any developers, whether that's for housing or in terms of any economic, any businesses, are there any that are currently pulling out because of lack of investment and NA Water? And also concerned, and I think it was slide 6 of the presentation there as well, Chair. I see a lot of red dots, or a few red and orange dots, especially in the Strabane area and in the wider Derry area. And just wondering, can Kieran and Steve as well give an update on what's planned there for the future? I think you said it might be PC27, but I'd be interested to hear what the plans are around the wider Strabane area, given that it doesn't look like it's included in PC21. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Well, now, Stephen, and answer the questions on those three and give an update.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that now. So, okay. Right. So going back to Councillor Jackson then, who was commenting on the potential impact on dairy houses and homes and the 12-year time frame for the local development plan. Yeah, I mean, that is a concern, and it's not just, I suppose, for Derry, Londonderry. It's that a lot of the investment that we will get and in upgrading the treatment works, say we get the 2 billion, a lot of it will be probably towards the latter part of PC21. So the last maybe 2 or 3 years, we'd actually be delivering those works. So that is a real issue and a concern. But what I can say is that if we get more certainty on our funding, so that we maybe have a medium to longer term funding, guaranteed, that helps us to plan and advance things much more efficiently, and we deliver more for less money. But we need to have that certainty over several price controls. And I think there will be some curtailing of, just in general, development plans across Northern Ireland. And I think, Derry City and Strabane won't be, Council won't be any different. But we are trying to, to work with developers and to phase. And I suppose you would have seen maybe articles in the press about the A2 Buncrana Road. We're trying to work with DFI Roads and upgrade the water mains in that system, and also reinforce and build new pumping stations on the wastewater side to service. As you're right, there's at least 2,400 homes, I think, linked to that sort of investment. So we're trying to put our best foot forward. We've got an evidence-based business plan. So we've got the plan, we've got the skills. We just need the funding to get moving and deliver these to the people of Derry, London Derry, and of course broader in Northern Ireland. I think there was another question then as well about Brexit and chemicals. I don't know,
Steve,
Kieran,
I might take that one. So, as soon as the vote came in relation to Brexit, so as a part of our operations team, and that reaches across the wider business. So one of the senior managers was allocated the role of starting to assess the potential impact on Brexit. Chemicals is certainly, as you rightly pointed out, Councillor Jackson, that our chemicals come from around the world, many locations. But at this stage, in some instances, we would have pre-purchased ahead to minimise the risk. But in other cases, we've just gone and looked at the security of supply. So at this stage, we would not put this as a high risk activity for us as an organisation. And there are other options as well. So there are other different treatment types that if that was needed, we would consider. But at this stage, the risk level to the organisation as a whole would be relatively low. So it wouldn't be classed, but it's something that we must obviously keep, and it has remained high on our agenda. But we have agreed, looking at the supply chain, to try and de-risk that as much as we possibly can.
Okay. Thanks, Kieran. Okay, moving on then to Alderman Ramsey, and as I say, I welcome your proposal to write to the executive on the funding issue. So you commented on the pre-development inquiry process and that it's probably too late for a lot of the developers. That may be the case. If they have got planning, then that is in the planning system, and we will, NI Water obviously has to service that need. We are working very closely with developers, but as a general rule, we're trying to front load the planning system. If developers contact us, before they've submitted planning, we can work with them. And I say PD is a very important tool, I think, for developers and Northern Ireland Water. Okay, so support the use of that. And when you also mentioned about phasing, which I commented on before. Just I suppose a bit of repetition, but yes, we will deliver the program, but a lot of upgrades will achieve what we call beneficial use towards the end of PC21, and of course there are many treatment works as well, and sewer systems that won't be upgraded until future price controls. Could be PC27 and PC33. Just depends on what the funding comes through. We're trying to advance as much as we can, but it's also what we can invest efficiently. And that's why we've built an evidence-based plan for about 2 billion. We haven't gone, say, to 3.5 billion, because we just simply can't invest that much money in that period. So it's about delivering value for money. And so as part of us being a regulated company as well, the utility regulator scrutinises our business plans so that they are efficient and deliver the best value for the people of Northern Ireland.
And Steve, I would say, it's really good from our perspective as well. The recognition and the understanding from the the folks on the meeting here that this is an integral part to the development for all areas of Northern Ireland. So we know, I'm a resident myself, as you guys know, but I understand that the increase in housing stock that we are going to need, and some of the plans, but it's bringing us all together so people understand the supply of water, the removal of wastewater, things like road network, things like broadband, all fit in to the wider economic picture, and from housing and from an industry perspective. So these are really key elements, as we develop and expand the sort of size of the city. So it's
and Councillor Edwards was asking whether we're aware of developers in council areas pulling out because of lack of investment. Not directly, but I would imagine, if they're coming to us with the pre-development inquiry process before they purchase land, then that can help them make an informed decision. I say that's the best thing that to be done, is to front load the process. But we're being open and transparent and honest. That you can go onto our website, to the developer services section. There's a wastewater capacity tab there. You can go in there and have a look at treatment works areas affected and sewer areas networks affected by with capacity issues. And that really is to encourage developers, whoever they are, large or small, to contact us and just to with their specific details, and then we can investigate further. Maybe there's a network capacity check needed, because it's not just a blanket red across an area. There may be ways that we can work with them, such as reducing hydraulic capacity for a future development by stormwater separation. So, and that could be on the site. We're looking at broader stormwater offsetting across other areas, but there's a bit to go on that. We've got to work with our environmental regulator on that as well. So we're trying to find other ways forward to address the drainage issues. And another option is the provision of a treatment works by a developer built to our standards for adoption later on. That's not something that we encourage, by the way, because it gives us with more diffuse infrastructure scattered around Northern Ireland. We've already got over 1,000 works. It's more increase on our base maintenance costs, but it is an option for a developer. But it might not be easy because they have to negotiate consents with the Environment Agency. But we are looking for alternative methods or means of assisting or helping or advising. But fundamentally, it is a huge investment in wastewater infrastructure to address historical underinvestment. That's the situation that we're in. So I hope that addresses that issue. And then I think there was the comment on Strabane. So I think Strabane is affected more by a network issue at a key combined sewer overflow. There's some investment in PC21, about 0.7 million, I think. I can have a look and get back to you with a bit more detail on Strabane if you would like after the meeting. And I think that'll probably be the most appropriate way to fully address your query.
For that, and our next speaker, person is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And like others, on behalf of the party, can I express our condolences to yourself and the wider family, Morris, on your bereavement. To Kieran and Stephen, thank you for your presentation. A couple of queries coming through. First of all, funding. There is, of course, water rate funding going into yourself via business and community facilities, even though they're zero rated. Does that go to you, or does it go to the executive pot and then reallocated to yourselves? With regard to capital funding, you needed 2.8 in the 2015-21 section. 21-27, you need 3.3. Is there a cumulative effect of that has impacted on the figures rising there, whereby you haven't been able to do something? So there is that accumulation, and it looks to me that what the balance, the funding that you were set at in both cases, around about a third of what you actually could be using. That's on page 4. On page 6, I suppose a bit like Councillor Edwards, I would be concerned at the lack of green dots that I see there, and with particular regard to Castlederg, and the impact that has on development, whether it's business development or residential development. You have indicated there with regard to developer-led facility provision that you're not too keen on that. If that was done in association with yourselves, would it not be the potential to provide extra funding by the back door, shall we say, into your pot to deal with the shortfalls that you have identified in facility provision with regard to water? So that would be the basics of it all. Final one with regard to development. Occasionally, when we're looking at DRD with regard to adoption of roads within estates, etc., it's actually Northern Water facilities or requirements that haven't been met by developers that causes problems for adoptions. DRD have an enforcement section that they operate on there. Northern Water have a similar enforcement section that they can deal with developers who do not put in the proper facilities when they are providing their various developments. Thank you, Chair.
Alderman Hussey, and the next speaker is Councillor McCann. Councillor McCann? Are you there, Councillor McCann?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Eamon.
Grant. Okay, look, I have a number of questions. One of them very specific, a couple of others are more long-term and more general. As has been mentioned, the cost of providing clean water goes up and up, as so many other things do. I have a specific question to start with, and it's about the River Faughan. Can either Stephen or Kieran tell us whether it is the case that extra testing for water quality in the Faughan has been necessary over this past couple of years downstream, downriver from the Maboy dump? And if that is the case, would it be possible to put a figure on that? How much extra has that cost us? Now, I'd also like to say I was a bit perturbed by some of the documentation or some elements of the documentation that has been provided to us. And it says sort of that it seemed to me, and you can tell me if this is paranoid, it seemed to me sort of that the thrust of much of it, that it was towards water charges. You know, when you say sort of we need extra investment, absolutely. There's extra and significant investment needed, and water is a necessity, and sewerage, sort of we can't live without it, and it cuts across all sorts of other areas, from housing to agriculture, and so forth. So it's necessary. It's a necessity of life, and at the moment, it is sort of regarded as a public service. Can you tell me sort of that if I'm wrong, that sort of the thrust of much as what is being said here is towards the imposition of water charges? Can you tell me that they've been ruled out? Because can you also tell me there's a great fear with the possibility of the privatisation of our water service generally? And if you think anybody thinks that's paranoid, look across the water and see what's happened there. And can I bring in sort of at that point recent comments by your boss, by your CEO, who's Ms. Venning? Have I got that name right? Sarah Venning?
Sarah Venning, Sarah, that's correct.
Yeah, Sarah Venning, and which she tells us are things, She tells us it's a funding crisis. Of course, we know this isn't our annual report. There is, of course, a funding crisis going on. And she also tells us that Northern Ireland Water has continued to successfully deliver private sector levels of performance and efficiency. This cannot continue under present circumstances, given the significant underfunding. That's a straightforward call for the privatisation of our water. I wonder when you go back to head office, would you mind sort of mentioning to this lady that there's some of us think that she's well outside her remit in suggesting the privatisation of water. It's a policy matter. It's an ideological matter. What she says sort of in her annual report is not telling us what's happening. It's not commentary on the facts. It's an ideological declaration, which is entirely improper and inappropriate for a person in her in her position to mention. And finally,
Councillor McCann, could I ask you to bring your remarks to a close? You're well over your 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll just finally with the question that was leading up to. Would you also suggest when you go back to head office to this woman, to your CEO, that she takes a wee look at what's happened across the water to privatisation and to privatised water companies as they now are? Would you take a look at Thames Water over this last 15 years? When public money had to be pumped into it in increasing levels, despite the fact that it's now privatised. Like
Councillor McCann, I'm going to have to bring you to a close.
Okay, but maybe you got the point. I'd love those things to be brought to the attention of this woman who's made this highly political and ideological statement, which is none of her business.
I think we'll go back to, that's all the speakers I have now. So it's up to Kieran or Stephen, whoever wants to reply to those.
Steve, if you want to take the first one, I can cover some of the later ones. Steve, I think you're on mute, actually.
Steve, you're on mute.
Mute me.
That's you.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So going back, so there's quite a few questions there. So Alderman, was it Derek Hussey, was asking about funding. Oh yeah, and does the money that or the business charges, if you like, that we bring in through, do they go to NI Water via the executive? Now, the funding we receive, which is the big thrust of the presentation, really, it doesn't matter how efficient we are as a business, we can only invest what we're given within the public expenditure cap. So we can't raise any extra money. All our profits pass through to DFI, to the department. So we're set at the moment, annual budgets, and that is what we have to work within. We can't borrow above that, or like what other companies can. So it doesn't really matter what profits really. We provide them and they go back to the executive or to the department, but it doesn't make any difference to what we can invest. I hope that addresses your query there. The other one then was about was the totality of need identified in PC15, about 2.8 billion, and then increasing to 3.3 billion in the PC21 sort of high-level assessment. So yeah, you're right, absolutely right. There's a bow wave of underinvestment. So it won't go down. It just keeps pushing up higher and higher. Unless you get on top of it, and we have sustained investment and certainty of investment over 2, maybe even 3 price controls, we won't be able to get to the top of the hill and reduce it. Okay. You mentioned the map on page 6. And the lack of green dots and Castlederg. Just look, Castlederg is amber, so that means there'll be some capacity issues, some capacity at that works. It may be nearing capacity, or it may have certain compliance issues, require a lot of more operational intervention. That's what it can mean, but it's not closed. Okay. The other comment then was about that we weren't too keen on developer-led wastewater treatment works. And really, it's because you can end up, say, with a lot more treatment works or assets to look after, which is not efficient. You can also end up with a treatment works that's at capacity, and a developer wants to develop close by. It doesn't make any sense for them to develop their own treatment works there. It really would need to get investment for the main works. We have to look at these, I think, on a case-by-case issue. They also need to be negotiated with NIEA. It's whether they are willing to accept a discharge consent from a new treatment works, and that has to be negotiated by the developer with NIEA. So I think I've captured your query there, or addressed your query there. There's also about adoption, and roads are able to adopt, and I think you said that they have an enforcement section. I mean, there are, I suppose, bonds that are taken, if you like, whether they can be used. But we're trying to get developers to put the quality sewer networks in that we can then go out and check, use our CCTV, survey them, and then we can adopt if they're up to standard. If they're not up to standard, then we won't adopt unless there's been further investment, because we can't invest from the public purse in something that should be correctly put in place by the developer. Councillor Eamon McCann.
Do you want me to answer some of those points, Steve?
If you want to, Kieran.
Yeah. So just to follow up on some of the comments from Councillor McCann. So we are always being compared, and I think rightly so, with other water companies. Most of the companies we are compared against are private water companies. So the English water company, Scottish Water isn't, but if you look at the GB water companies, the majority of those organisations are privatised companies. Now, if you look at when the regulator ourselves, we benchmark ourselves, and if you looked at a lot of the other European companies, we try to learn. And in some cases they'll learn from us, but look at where we can be world class and areas that we need to improve on. So one of the areas that we are very, very clear on is that we have a really good, strong organisation, very service driven, and we have to balance, and same similar scenario for the council. We have to balance a high level of service, 24/7 service, with looking at our operational costs, our compliance costs, things like the energy carbon challenge, and our capital funding. We have to weigh all those parameters up when we're looking at how we invest. At no stage, I have not read at any stage in our business plan a call for water charges or privatisation. But I mean, in my view, and I've met our chief executive on a number of occasions, very, very focused on the delivery and our core service and what we do as a business. And we have to compare ourselves against other organisations so we can improve. We've really done very, very well over the last 3-4 years on our customer service scores. They're right up there with the best in the industry, and we still think we can do more. So it's important that we constantly push ourselves. My own department's been formed a few years ago, and that's to help really get even further with what a lot of the other really leading organizations, not just water companies, are doing, so that we can constantly improve. But I mean, in relation to privatization, I haven't seen any information that would lead me to believe that our chief executive is pushing us in that direction, nor is it part of our business plan. And at this stage, areas such as water charges, domestic water charges, they are not in our decision. That's certainly not part of our decision, scope at this stage.
Yeah. What our key message is that the model for NI Water just isn't working. That is the message, and it is up. And Councillor McCann, you're absolutely right. It's for the executive to decide what will be a better model, or if they want to support a different model for NI Water, whatever that is. We just want to get on with our job and deliver to the people of Northern Ireland, the best of our ability, and be as efficient as we can, and give us as good a customer service as we can. So there was another question as well about the River Fochen and the testing because of the Maboy dump. I would think there would be been extra testing to do with the dump. I'm not sure of the costs, but we can certainly get back to you on that, Councillor McCann.
And we did undertake, Councillor McCann, an enhanced level of testing over and above our normal standard water quality testing, and the results have come back clear for us. And I mean, it's obviously, any of the water from the River Fochen will go through Carmoney water treatment work, so it will be also treated. You know that, but it's just to give you another level of assurance on that piece as well. Okay.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Jackson, who just wants to come back in briefly, and I'm sure he will be brief.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's just on that final point. it's something that hasn't been raised in all the questions. So I think it's only right that we touch on it. It's on the environmental protections. I know that when we talk about privatised companies in England and Wales, I just know that it's widely reported in the media that there was over 200,000 instances where there was raw sewage dumped in rivers and in England and Wales, due to capacity issues. Now we've outlined the capacity issues that we're experiencing here in the north. Has there been any instances where there's raw sewage that have been dumped and their rivers as a result of capacity issues? And just on the proposal that was made, Chair, we support the proposal in terms of writing to the executive, but there's no hiding from this. Now, this is the responsibility of the infrastructure minister. And Chair, I just want to remind the committee that we have a proposal that we invite the infrastructure committee, the city and the district. So I know under the current climate, it's not appropriate for that to take place, but hopefully that meeting can take place before the PC21 is finalised. And I'm sure that the issues of the A2 Buncrana Road and the issues of our infrastructure, our water treatment infrastructure, is going to be high on the agenda for that meeting. So, but on that basis, we're happy with the proposal. But I just wanted to ask a wee question around the environmental protections. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Who's going to come back in under that environmental protection? Stephen or Kieran?
I'll come back. Yeah. So, so the question was sort of raw sewage dumped due to capacity issues. Well, what we have are we have safety valves on our sewer networks called combined sewer overflows. So they're consented to operate at a certain frequency with the with the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. Now, where you have capacity issues in our networks, then they would spill. There would be releases, if you like, more frequently than desired. So then they're classified as unsatisfactory intermittent discharges. And that's a classification that's given to it by NIEA and NI Water. And a large part of our PC21 business plan is to address those sort of issues in our networks. Okay, and that's across Northern Ireland. And the reason we have those combined sewer overflows, which are common in all wastewater systems across the UK and Europe and other places besides, is that it is to prevent the backing up of sewage entering people's homes. Okay, now that does happen in certain occasions as well, and it's horrendous. I think there are about 120 properties across Northern Ireland that suffer for that, suffer that in very heavy rainfall. Things back up, and so though we have a targeted program to address that issue, and that is our number one customer issue that's been fed to us through customer surveys over several price controls that we should address. But so we have got CSOs. Some of them do operate more frequently than they should and are categorised as unsatisfactory intermittent discharges. But they are operating to protect, flooding for people's homes and businesses.
Okay. You're on mute.
Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry. Karen, do you want to come back just on the update from Councillor Jackson about the meeting with the Department of Infrastructure? Just to update us on that, where that is. Yes, Chair, happy to. Chair, members, this was a proposal that was made at full council that we invite the Infrastructure Committee to the city and offer them the Guildhall in order to undertake their meeting. Members, that letter was sent to the Infrastructure Committee and we haven't yet had a response, but Chair, I can arrange for us to follow up on that following the meeting today. Thank you very much for that, Karen. And I want to say thank both of you for coming on with the presentation. It's hitting us very stark in the face, the difficulties that we're facing here. And I think that what you did clearly indicate is, this funding and getting the sewage end of it and the water end of it right is an integral part of how we promote the council area. Should it be private housing or social housing? And as you quite rightly mentioned about the local development plan and how we move forward. And I'm sure you're getting a very strong message from the committee today that we are happy to write to central government in respect of the investment that is needed to deal with this issue. But from myself, thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay,
Chair,
No, thanks.
Chair,
Thanks very much for the time.
Chair, I think Alderman Hussey wanted to come back in again from the chat.
Right.
Oh.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alderman Hussey. Alderman Hussey.
Sorry, you're on mute, Alderman Hussey.
Okay now?
Yep, go ahead.
So, sorry for that. Towards the end there, I'm not sure if it was Kieran or Stephen, mentioned that NI Water would be concerned about the business style, the business organisation that they have to operate under. I wonder, if we can include in the motion that's going from David's motion, that the department would review the methodology of business operation for Northern Ireland Water, because there obviously seems to be a concern there. And secondly, on Councillor Jackson's point, we've got to remember that, of course, it's the Department of Finance who assess business cases. Whilst the business case goes via the Department for Infrastructure, the Department of Finance are the department who assess these business cases financially. Thank you, Chair.
And I think it would be fair to say, I think Steve, from operationally, I think we've got it right as a water utility. But I think Steve's point, and Steve can correct me, is around, the current, really our concerns is around that quantum of the funding. That is the concern that we have, to make that a very clear message, because we have done a lot of work in, background research and analysis and understanding what our issues are. And we know what our issues are, and it's bringing that forward, combined with the funding, so we can deliver the world-class utility that we want to be. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Alderman Hussey, what was your wording again to add on to Alderman Ramsey's proposal to see if he's able to accept it?
It's simply, or am I on mute?
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
It's simply in light of concerns about how the departments, I suppose, treat Northern Ireland Water as a business organisation, that they review that. I'm looking towards Stephen and Kieran here to see if that sort of fits in with their feeling on it.
Yeah, well, I think, as I said before, it's obviously the model that we have at the moment is not working and needs to be considered, and it is, I suppose, the executive or that can make a call on that. It is I suppose it's because we have to work within public expenditure limits that curtails us, so we can't borrow above that. We have to go with what we're given on an annual basis. The more certainty we have in funding, I suppose, and if it meets our needs that we can invest efficiently, then we can start lifting these development constraints. That's a bit of a plague across Northern Ireland. But it will take time to put these plans in place and deliver, and to be aligned with your local development plans. As I say, we're neck and neck, trying to get things in place. So it's not an easy position that we're all in. But I welcome, the letter to go from the council. And that we are aligned, in identifying how important this issue is, because it underpins, businesses, hospitals, communities. You've got to have a functioning water utility and wastewater services. It's essential.
Chair, I think then the wording is that including, if possible, a review of the business model.
I want to just go back to Alderman Ramsey. Is he still there? Yeah.
Chair, just
Are you happy enough with that?
Yes, and listen. At the end of the day, what this does is actually strengthen the motion going forward, and I welcome the addition. Thank you.
Happy enough with that? I see no dissenting voices, so we'll take that that amendment to the proposal as carried. Once again, thank you very much for the presentation.
Morris, I think I put it in instead I wanted, so it won't even take me a minute, but I have a remark I want to make. I did put it in the chat.
Go ahead, Eamon.
Okay, the thing I wanted to say, this is not a matter for the Department of Infrastructure alone, and I wanted to correct that. I know it was said in good faith sort of by Councillor Jackson. Not true, and it's important that we understand this. If ever there was a cross-cutting issue, this is it. This is a matter for the executive as a whole, and we must not allow it to be seen as the responsibility of one minister only, and therefore up for inter-party dispute. The whole executive's involved in this.
Thank you, Eamon, for that.
Okay.
Once again, thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The next item of business, members, is chairperson's business. I have no chairperson's business. I don't. No one else has intimated to me that they wanted to come in under chairperson's business. So we will move on to the minutes of the ENR on October the 14th. First of all, we'll take for accuracy pages 13 to 42.
Proposed, Chair.
Sean Carr, could have a seconder.
Seconded, Chair, Councillor McKee.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to any matters arising.
With your permission, Chair.
Hussey.
Thank you. A couple of points. ER 168/20 reference Broom Hall. I note on that, maybe it was on the day mentioned, the use of Broom Hall by the Women's Royal Navy Service, commonly known as the Wrens. I'll declare personal interest there because my mum was there briefly before she moved to service in the south of England. But I think that is something that cannot be forgotten about in the history of Broom Hall. With regard to ER 170, the 170 on page 19 is the recycling centres, and it was with regard to Eglinton Recycling Centre. I'm sure that other councillors from the Derry area will have brought on board the issue of Killam still being closed, and hopefully that can be sorted out in the longer term. 171 on page 21, reference fireworks. Mention was made there, and Councillor Kerrigan brought it up. The misuse of fireworks, totally agree with the sentiments of that, but there was nothing coming out of it. And I'm wondering if it would be possible for officers to investigate the Royal Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals suggestions and report on possible council actions that could be brought in on that. With regard to ER 176, the shrub bed, that's on page 25. Get to it now. Maintenance of shrub bed, Lower Main Street, Castleberry. I'm assuming that's actually in the K Court. And support what's been said there. Yes, if it's DFA, let them do it. If not, we'll consider it again. But also within that crisp scheme, there were several other matters that arose. I'm mindful of the shrubbery at Meeting House Lane car park in Castleberry, which is in need of cutting back, and wondering, it's in the car park, which of course is under council control. Is the shrubbery bit of it also within council control? Within that as well, access to Castleberry Town via Prospect Terrace. It's very shabby on that particular access. So I wonder, could council officers look at that, ascertain the responsibility for those who are leaving that very untidy entrance into Castleberry. And also on Main Street within the crisp scheme, there was a tree on Main Street that is not there anymore. Are there any plans to have that dealt with? Moving on to page 28, and this is with regard to the 8 million trees. You can get to page 28. The update on the 8 million trees that I want to very quickly cover. In the report, I went back to the previous meeting where the full report was. Systematic approach for identifying where trees can be planted, developing woodland potential study to be undertaken. Also mention of the Forest Service grant money for small wood scheme administered by Woodland Trust, providing trees and fencing. Within the substantive report that is due to come on that, I would ask that Council would consider the encouragement and support with assistance and advice to any groups, culture, heritage or whatever, wishing to consider planting trees to mark the 100th anniversary of the establishment of Northern Ireland via some of these small trees. That has been done on other occasions to mark notable occasions, and I think it's something that should be considered in that report. And finally, Chair, ER 184, City Cemetery. I note a lot of the emphasis there is on the City Cemetery, but also Ernie had similar problems with the lawn type cemetery layout. So the report that's coming forward on that, just checking on page 75, the further detailed report should be more than just the City Cemetery, but all of our cemeteries, in particular those other cemeteries where the lawn type facility is utilised within them. Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm sorry I took so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussey, for that there. And you have had quite a list there. Now, I'm going to bring Karen in at that stage just to see what she has picked up there, because I'm sure some of the information maybe that you need, it may take a bit of time for to resource that information. So, Karen, could you just come in?
Yeah, Chair, members, we can provide a further update on Eglinton and Kiln. Connor's on the call as well, so we can do that. In terms of the fireworks, members, I think we pointed out at the last meeting that that's primarily led by Health and Communities Committee, because they have environmental health and community safety. So we did make that aware to the relevant officers, and we will ask them again to follow that up at Health and Communities Committee. We will note the various comments in terms of individual areas of Castleberg and follow up directly with Alderman Hussey if that's okay with you, Chair. And certainly we'll make the officers aware of the comments in relation to the report on the million trees. And members, just for your information, as you're aware, members agreed to reinstate the cemeteries working group, and we have now made contact with the various party leaders, etc., as per the normal working group arrangement. They asked for nominations onto the cemeteries working group. So I presume that's something that can be considered there and then come forward as a result of that working group and back to the committee for consideration. Connor, would you like to maybe do a short update in relation to the recycling centres, if you don't mind?
Just before Connor comes in, could I ask Derek to mute his mic? That's it.
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of Eglinton, following the resolution at last month's council meeting, we have met with the landowner down there in terms of a traffic management plan for the site, and we had the company on site on Monday morning to carry out that review, and we've had a draft report back on that. Now, there are some areas of conflict between what the landowner had proposed in the first instance and what the traffic management consultants had looked at on Monday. So there's a further meeting with Gerard O'Donnell just to tease those issues out. Now, there's nothing complicated in it, but it will just take a further meeting just to close those out. And I'd say it's back to the circulation of traffic and pedestrians outside of the recycling centre, but inside the confines of the wider industrial complex. But hopefully we will get a resolution to that by the weekend, and then that will go forward to HSE and I for final sign-off and allow us to reopen the site again. In terms of Kiln, We had a meeting with one of the landowners up there on Monday to talk around some of the options, and he's very supportive, and in fact come up with a number of other, an option that we had considered, but we thought he wouldn't be in favour of, and the landowner is in favour of an option. So we are going to progress that. I've had some initial conversations with colleagues in planning just to run that by them to get some steer, and if there were any further issues on that. But that is progressing, and as per, again, the recommendation at last month's council meeting, we're progressing with all the other options in terms of looking at the existing site to see what we can do with that. There was a further site identified within the village, taking that forward as well. Looking at the former DOE yard at the bridge in Castle Derry, and then rerunning the expressions of interest. So all of those are moving forward. And in terms of some of the concerns that members raised, just in terms of access to facilities, so things like bathroom suites and those heavier items can be accommodated with the vehicles at Strabane on the days in question. And we're looking at what we can do in the short term regarding paint and some of the other items that members had raised at that time. So all of that is moving forward. And again, I have noted all the issues that Alderman Hussey had raised there in terms of Meeting House Lane and Prospect Terrace and Strabane. I'll take those forward with the team directly.
Thank you very much for the.
Appreciate it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker on matters arising is Alderman McCready.
Thanks, Chair. And most has been answered by Conor. Thankfully, I'd just like to extend my thanks to Conor for the detailed update this morning pertaining to Eglinton. I very much would like an update once we get the risk assessment signed off, and indeed the updated or refined traffic management plan. Let us know when the site's good to go. A long time coming, so thanks for your efforts on that one. Separately, on the ENR 183, thanks, Karen, for the update on the recommencement of the cemeteries working group. I look forward to the resolutions which come out of that. Not an easy task. I don't envy the members on that. But specifically, we're working on a report about to the extent of the impact of the said item that we went through in detail. When do we get that report? Thanks, Chair.
I have one more speaker, and I'll take Councillor Carr. You wanted to come on as well? Councillor Carr?
Yeah, Chair, it's just on item ER 183/20. Just to nominate independent Councillor Gary Donnelly onto that working group. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Karen, do you want to come back in on Alderman McCready?
Yeah, and Chair, we have, obviously, we've got a couple of nominations now. Once we have those nominations, we'll organise a meeting of the working group as quickly as possible. Members, we do need to actually have that before we can actually bring a report back to members, because that was what members had agreed, that their working group would sit down and consider the issues in detail, and we'd bring a further report. So as officers, members, as soon as we are able to pull that group together, we will have them pulled together, and hopefully we will be able to agree with the group a proposition that can then be brought into the next available committee. So we'll progress it as soon as we possibly can, members. And I don't know if there's anything more you want to add on that. Just to reassure members that we are doing the best we can in terms of the situation we face at the minute there.
Yeah, and as I said in the last meeting, this is a sensitive and delicate issue, and all of the team are fully aware of that. We'll reflect that in the report. Outside of what we had agreed, the Council's Corporate Health and Safety Officer has been involved, the Insurance Officer has been involved, but we can bring all of those discussions in detail to the members' working group for to allow the drafting of the report to come forward for further consideration.
Thank you, everyone, for that there. And I would just encourage those parties who haven't nominated yet to get the nominations in for the Cemeteries Working Group. That's matters arising finished. So we move on to the business of the day, and we have item 6 and item 7 is for noting. But I see item 6, I believe that there will be some discussion in around that, because there is a recommendation there to mandate officers to, see if they can seek funding from central government. Does anybody want to come in and speak on? Ryan, Alderman McCready?
Sorry, Chair, if I could just please, if you don't mind, come in first. And members, just we do actually have a very short presentation by our consultant who did the work for us on behalf of this. So if you don't mind, Chair, with your indulgence, if Conor can introduce him and maybe we can hear from him before members make their comments, if that's okay.
That's okay, Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. This item flows out of a request from members to bring forward a report setting out the cost and associated issues with transferring or switching from a curbside commingled collection system as we operate at present to a curbside sort. The difference being at the moment, all of recycled materials go into a blue bin and then they're taken off-site for processing. In a curbside sort system, they are separated at the curbside into material streams on the lorry and then taken away. Following the recommendation some time back in terms of the circular economy zero waste strategy, we've been taking forward elements of that strategy, and one of those being the introduction of the separate collections. We engaged Taggart Consultant to have a look at this in depth and to bring forward what they consider to be the main issues for consideration, including in that are things like cost, but then all the other issues on what makes up that additional cost and so on. So Adrian Thompson is here from Taggart's and he will take us through the presentation. So if members just bear with us, Adrian is online there now.
Thank you very much, Conor. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm going to try and work some IT magic and hopefully you can all see that presentation coming up on your screen.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so as Conor introduced, I'm Adrian Thompson, Technical Director of WDR and RT Taggart. We were appointed to look at the impacts of switching from your current commingled collection system to a curbside sort system. So what I would just like to take you through is really our task in hand that we were issued with, just a recap on your current collection method, and a recap also on scenario 4 of the zero waste strategy. I will look at the comparison of the options, the resources required to deliver scenario 4. We undertook a detailed technical model, followed by a financial analysis. I'll take you through that and the outcomes of that, the risks associated with a change, the non-monetary aspects to consider, and the conclusions, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So we were commissioned to look at the key impacts of switching from your current curbside sort system to scenario 4, as I'll refer to it in this presentation. So the impacts that we were tasked with looking at are the financial impacts, the operational impacts, environmental impacts, social impacts such as education and awareness of your residents, health and safety implications, the materials recovery impact, and the life expectancy of the proposed system. So just to recap on your current collection system, you have a wheeled bin for your mixed recycling to collect paper, card, metals, glass, textiles, and small electrical items, which is collected fortnightly. That's issued to all households. You then have a weekly food waste collection to about 43,000 households. You have a 240-litre wheeled bin collected fortnightly to about just under 11,000 households for the collection of a mixed garden and food waste collection. You have a 240-litre wheeled bin for a green waste collection on a fortnightly basis to under 6,000 households. And then every household has their residual waste collection fortnightly through mostly a 240 wheeled bin. And as you can see there from the table, you can see most of these containers are collected through standard bin lorries. Now, if we just reflect on scenario 4 of the zero waste strategy, your mixed recycling under this proposal would be collected through a triple stack box system. They would collect paper, card, plastic, glass, and textiles. The householders are required to separate the different materials into the different boxes. That would be a weekly collection issued to all households. Combined with this would be a weekly food waste collection to all households using a curbside caddy as well. Both these materials could be collected in a single pass with what's called a stillage vehicle, which is a 12-ton vehicle with several compartments for the individual materials to be collected separately. The capacity of that vehicle would be about 4.5 tons versus the 11 of a standard bin lorry. You would then have, to those households that have the appropriate outdoor space, a green waste collection. So that's just under 36,000 households. That would be collected fortnightly. And then under the proposal, you'd be reducing your residual waste capacity to a 140 litre wheeled bin collected fortnightly. Now, studies from RAP and others would suggest that this system works best whenever you impose a reduced residual waste collection. So on the back of our work, as I stated, we created a technical model to allow us to fully assess the zero waste strategy, scenario 4 of the zero waste strategy in full detail. So on your current collection system, we added bin counters to your vehicles, and we calculated the number of bins collected in each round. That gave us what your set out rate was. Now, set out rate is when a householder basically sets out their bin on each collection opportunity. That is currently sitting for your current collection method at about 86%. From the data we have from other local authority trials in Northern Ireland, the curbside sort system under scenario 4 is achieving about a 60% set out rate. Whenever we looked at the detailed figures for what you're actually capturing at the curbside, your current collection method is capturing 182 kilograms per household per annum, whereas it's predicted that scenario 4 will capture 152 kilograms. That's 30 kilograms less per household per annum. This leads to the predicted capture rates of just over 11,000 tons of mixed recycling for your current system versus just over 9,000 tons for scenario 4 of the zero waste strategy. So in summary, this is sort of an output of the technical model. In essence, we were able to actually model based on a set out rate and the time it actually takes to collect the stillage, the 3-stack box system. We were able to calculate what resources you would need to deliver scenario 4. So our calculation is, in addition to the bin lorries you need for the collection of green waste and residual waste, you would need 30 stillage vehicles at a cost of 120,000 per vehicle. It gives a capital cost of 3.6 million. Speaking with the council's fleet managers, they requested that there be also additional spare stillages for the time periods for vehicle servicing and breakdown. That came to a cost of an additional 480,000. You will need a bulk of spare parts to allow the servicing of those vehicles, a stock of those as it would be. That's £4,000. In total, you'll need 40 drivers to deliver the whole service. That's 10 extra than what you currently have. The total cost for your driver's labour for scenario 4 would be just under 1.2 million. You would then need 80 operatives, the crew to collect the containers. That's an increase of 27 over your 53 you currently have. So that would take that labour cost to just over 2.1 million. Because you would be increasing your fleet size, you would need 2 additional mechanics with an annual cost of just under 48,000. As per other councils that have implemented trials of a curbside sort system, given the quantum of the change that we required to 60,000 households, it's recommended you would have a project manager in place for at least 2 years to actually oversee the delivery of the project. That would be at a cost of 45,000 per year. You would need to purchase 61,000 triple stack boxes and trolleys at a cost of just over 2.4 million. RAP themselves advised that come year 2, you would need to allow for a replacement of 4% of the rolled out boxes due to breakages. That comes in at a cost of just an annual operating cost of under 100,000 per annum. There would be 17,000 households that currently don't have the curbside caddies. That would cost 54,000. You would also need to roll out 140-litre residual bins at a cost of 700,000. There's also quite a lot of bins and containers to be rolled out. So as per other rollouts that you've delivered, you would need to rent a storage facility for an estimated time of 2 years at 45,000 per annum. You would then need to deliver your triple stack boxes, your residual bins, the 140-litre ones, and collect in the old 240-litre mixed recycling bins and residual bins. Each of those collections cost about 150,000. Now, whenever we looked at this process, we looked at your depots and your transfer stations. So scenario 4 of the zero waste strategy will then require 6 separate materials to be tipped from these stillage vehicles, as well as the green waste from the bin lorries and the residual waste from the bin lorries. The RAP state that it takes 30 minutes for each of these stillage lorries to discharge its load. You'll also have per day 30 of those lorries coming back to discharge their load, each taking 30 minutes. So your current waste transfer station infrastructure isn't capable of handling the collection method for the dry recycling under scenario 4. So we've had to model in a new waste transfer station stroke baling station to actually collect these materials. So based on our experience of delivering such infrastructure, we modeled the capital cost and the operational cost of that facility. We also took account of the best recycled income that you could get, and we discounted the two from each other, and that has given us an ability to calculate an annual or a per ton operating cost for that new system. In essence, a gate fee, that would be £36.49 per ton to operate that new baling station. There would also be the need for a communications campaign, and that would equate to £129,000 worth of cost, and that's in line with what RAP would recommend in communications. So whenever we summarise the outcome of the financial analysis on the back of the technical model, your cost to change to the new system would be 7.8 million. The annual operating cost would be just over 7.8 million, and that compares to 6.9 million for your current system. We have then managed to equate that to a cost per tonne and a cost per household. So your current system costs about £136 per tonne or £120 per household. Scenario 4 will cost 180 per tonne and 152 per household. The main capital costs are driven by the purchase of the stillage vehicles at 3.6 million and the triple stack boxes at 2.4. And likewise, the operational costs are driven by the labour costs associated with increased drivers and crew, 1.2 million and 2.1 million respectively. The outcome of the technical model also allowed us to predict the total amount of waste diverted from your residual stream. So when we take the food waste, the organic waste, and the mixed recycling, your current collection method is predicted to divert just over 21,000 tonnes of material from the residual stream. Scenario 4 will divert roughly 1,900 tonnes less at just over 19,500 tonnes. So in summary, we can conclude that scenario 4 is £44 per tonne more expensive, £32 per household more expensive than your current system. The change in fleet will allow you to sell 14 bin lorries that you currently have, but the income from that is minimal at £54,000. There's the operational impacts. It takes 10 seconds to empty a wheeled bin, but as part of this study, we looked at other councils that were operating this triple stack trial, and we actually did a timed analysis of the emptying of the triple stack boxes. That equated to 60 seconds per household to service that system. So that sort of fed back into the technical model and is the main driver for the increased labour associated with delivering that system. As I mentioned, the model predicts that scenario 4 will collect 1,900 tonnes less, more recyclates. And the only assumption that can be made is if it's not collected through the recycling collection at the curbside, it must be ending up in the residual bin. Therefore, scenario 4 has the potential to increase your residual disposal costs of just under 100,000 per annum. That would take the operating costs of scenario 4 to just over 7.9 million. That's 1 million more per annum than your current collection system. So what are the risks of moving to scenario 4? There's failure potentially to get buy-in to the new recycling scheme from the householders in the district. I've just included some of the photos there that I would see in and around Belfast, where the system's currently being trialled as well. So the failure to get buy-in could be in terms of maybe not setting out your container, or it could be misusing it, as is the case of the photo here, by adding contamination. There's risks for operating and other revenue cost overruns. There's also, on the horizon, legislation changes potentially in terms of extended producer responsibility, plastic tax, and the deposit return scheme. This could cannibalise the curbside collection recycled stream, the high value materials such as aluminium, glass, and high grade plastics. So therefore, there's a risk that the council could be left operating an expensive system, collecting the lower value materials such as paper, card, and pots, tubs, and trays. In terms of the non-monetary aspects, as I previously mentioned, there's the potential you could be collecting 1,900 tonnes less recyclates. Currently, the council sits top of the dry recycling rate in all councils, and it has sat as top council for the last 4 years. The further rollout of brown bins on the current system could give a greater ability to the council to achieve the circular economy targets of 55% in 2025, 60% in 2030, 65% in 2035. No known reprocessors of the materials in the collection system are based within the district. The three main reprocessors, one is for HDPE, that's the plastic milk bottles only, part of the plastic stream. They're based in Portadown. Paper, also based in Portadown, and glass you have based in Fermanagh. And the other element is we're no longer a manufacturing nation, and that's primarily based to we're uncompetitive in terms of labour and energy costs. So there's a risk that we could potentially move into a system to provide materials to 3 local companies. But once they're full, there may not be the actual economic drive to develop more companies locally because they just can't compete in a global market. Potential householder participation issues are demonstrated by the current trial reports that are available, which demonstrate a 60% set out rate for the triple stack box system versus your 86% that you're currently achieving with your existing recycling collection. There's RAP evidence that highlights concerns with the triple stack boxes in terms of the size of the flaps to get the materials through. The design of the bottom box where card is to be placed, there's no lid on that, which allows the card to get wet. Some boxes are claimed to be too small for the materials, particularly plastic. If contamination is placed within the boxes, the design of the system is that it's left behind, so it doesn't form contamination of the stream. Problem is, when it comes to windy days, there's risks that the boxes can be blown over and this leads to litter. There's complaints from householders that whenever they're collected, that the boxes aren't restacked in the trolley properly, and also stability issues in windy conditions. It seems to be an inefficient system for the council to operate, given that it takes 6 times longer to service a household than the current wheel bin system. And there's reports through IOSH that highlight potential musculoskeletal issues for the collection crew through multiple bending and lifting operations. So in conclusion, your existing transfer stations and depots are not of a sufficient size, so you would need to develop a new one. The capital cost to change would be 7.8 million. The operational cost would be 7.8 million per annum. That's 1 million more expensive than your current collection system. Of that 1 million, 100,000 of that additional cost would be associated with additional residual waste disposal costs. You could be collecting 1,900 tonnes less recyclate. There's a variance in the participation rate in the system. RAP themselves highlight that from year 2, 4% of the boxes need replaced per annum due to breakages, and therefore they need to be replaced to ensure that householders still need to participate in the system. If you collect less recyclate, it just makes it even more difficult to achieve the current and future recycling targets, including the circular economy targets. And then also the potential musculoskeletal issues associated with the collection. There's also public feedback that could be levied at the council in terms of the design of the system, the size of the flaps of the boxes, the design of the bottom box and the card getting wet, some boxes being too small, litter issues, complaints about the stability of the system in windy conditions. It also leads to a total of 6 containers. That's 3 boxes for the curbside sort, a food waste caddy to be left at the curbside, a green waste bin and a residual waste bin in comparison to the 3 containers on the current system. And then there's also the potential opposition to the reduction in capacity of the residual collection. So I would welcome any questions that you would have if you want to ask the questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Adrian. And I have 4 speakers that I've noted here is Alderman McCready, Councillor Durkin, Mary Durkin, and Councillor Burke, and Alderman Hussey. So I will take Alderman McCready first.
Thanks, Morris, and thank you, Adrian, for a fairly comprehensive brief on what is a huge issue that we're faced with in council. You know, as we debate on one side about how we change and add value to a climate emergency and take recycling and waste a lot more seriously. And so it's not an easy undertaking, but I thank you for the detail. A couple of questions. Firstly is, why have you only outlined and then analysed scenario 4? Have you done a detailed analysis of the other 3 scenarios to be brought before this committee? And just comments specifically on scenario 4 is, a lot of the findings about clearly the cost, which we can't escape from as members of this council. And people say, well, you can't put a cost on, climate emergency, waste, but in our jobs, yes, you can. And it's something that we must take into consideration very seriously, and also balance that with how effective would this be if we were to take it on, notwithstanding the financial constraints and issues we have with COVID. But even COVID aside, this is a huge decision for us to transform how we deal with waste and recycle it holistically. The issue I have as a member of this committee at the moment is because it is such a huge transformational or transitional decision to be made. I want more detail on the other scenarios, and more so on clearly I've seen the impact assessment and the likelihood on the financial side, and also the risks associated with that. But I want the comparable data. You mentioned a few council areas like Belfast. I really want an in-depth analysis on how does that really translate and what is the actual variations of cost. That's a specific question I would like back in the future. About the future-proofing of any concept, we've touched on lots of programs and projects throughout council, and we always try and future-proof. And in the case of something which is such a large scale, there's always area for exploitation through business opportunities that people will look to local authority for contracts, etc., etc. And you've highlighted a few ones about the taxes, the plastics, and the monopoly of a few companies, which we would be almost part of a consortium. Whatever we do with our recyclates in the manner in which we do, that I have concerns of that, of the same way we have been locked into these contracts and dealing with waste for the last 20 years, and some of the grey areas which have resurfaced, not just Maboy as an issue, but overall. So that's my general comments, and with two specific questions in. But for members, I want to just convey that I'm not comfortable at all with the recommendations to commit to any financial, for this council to partake in any financial commitments. I am very supportive of the recommendations for council officers to engage with central government and look for external funding to fund a project like this, not necessarily scenario 4. I think we need to get it in the right order. Let's identify how we're going to deal with waste and look at the costs associated with that, as opposed to let's go find some money and transform something without going down into the greater detail. And I was also outlined, which I thank the officers for the note that came through, is this is going to be a long-term program and a transformational change, whether it's 7 years or 10 years, and we need to look at it in that context as well. So thanks for that, Chair, and Adrian and Karen, Connor.
Our next speaker is Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this report forward, Connor. It is something I have been looking forward to and asking about curbside sort, because it is an important part of the wider strategy of zero waste that we're committed to now, and that's going to be transformative. Thank you, Adrian, for your presentation. As Alderman McCready has said, the report is very focused on one model. While I'm very excited about the concept, I don't claim to have any expertise in terms to challenge the figures or look beyond. But I am aware that we do have expertise within our partners in council in terms of the wider zero waste strategy. Zero Waste Northwest have very much been playing a major role in terms of shaping our wider policy and our wider strategy. And I think, it's important that they're engaged in terms of looking at other models, looking beyond this model 4. We are a zero waste municipality. We're one of the first on the islands, and through that, our zero waste networks have access to information on models that are working and not working elsewhere. So I am supportive of the general recommendation of engaging with central government in terms of sourcing funds. I think curbside sort is the way to go, but like the previous speaker, I'm not convinced, and I'd be wary of committing to this model. I do think there needs to be more work done, and perhaps it would be helpful if the likes of Zero Waste Northwest could have engagement with the consultants and maybe look around things, and if other areas can be explored, because this is huge, this is transformative, and we need to get it right, and we'd be doing a disservice as a committee and as a council if we weren't taking a more holistic approach and a more informed approach. Thank you.
Next speaker is Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and thanks to Adrian as well for presenting there as well today. I think obviously from the report, there's difficulties and concerns around the costings and the resources and that. But it is important. Obviously, we are aware the council does have a commitment to achieving that zero waste circular economy sort of strategy, and the switch a key element to this. I do agree with the previous two speakers, though. We do have to ensure we get it right. Obviously, this is very focused on scenario 4, but we would agree with the idea as well of approaching central government around possible funding and opportunities, but obviously looking at other avenues as well in terms of not just scenario 4 as a single one. So we would kind of be on agreement with that. Obviously, do you know what I mean? It's been mentioned as well. No, this is going to be a work in progress. There is going to be difficulties, and it's a massive undertaking. But it'll be something that we do need to explore. Just a few questions. Mary kind of touched on it there around Zero Northwest, because obviously they've approached myself, somewhere to I'm sure everyone else on this committee, just about what part they had in kind of the preparation of today's paper. And then the other things have kind of been answered, so that's grand. Thank you.
Our last speaker at the moment is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for an extremely comprehensive review of one of the alternatives available. As has been said by others, I'd like to know the implications of the other alternatives that may be available. I think Conor can confirm, you've already done it yourself, Adrian. We're already doing extremely well with our recycling rate. We're one of the best, if not the best, in Northern Ireland and beyond. So what we're being told here, roughly, is, okay, guys, you want to switch to the system, it's going to cost you around about 8 million, and thereafter, an extra million. That seems to be, the bottom line on it, via this option. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because at the moment, we are ahead of the game. I'd like to know what the other alternatives are. Certainly, other alternatives at the moment, what's being presented for me here is not one that we need to. Thank you.
Maurice, I've been trying to get your attention there. Yep.
Go ahead, Eamon.
Okay, thanks very much, Maurice. I want to say in relation to the last couple of speakers, yes, I can answer one of the questions. Has Zero Waste Northwest been consulted about this? Well, I've spoken to Zero Waste Northwest in the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes after I come up. The answer is that they say they haven't been consulted. I'm surprised about that. Not that they have any more entitlement than anybody else, but they have sort of pioneered this campaign sort of in this area, and I think I've given a number of presentations, and I do think they should have been, and I say now sort of that before anything that they ought to be consulted now. And we shouldn't go anywhere sort of unless we've got at least attempted to get their backing. The other couple of things I want to say are not particularly on that, but they're on environmental protection generally. I was intrigued by Claire Hanna, of the MP for South Belfast, sort of asked in July so not terribly long ago, asked the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and DEFRA across the water, quote, what assessment he has made of the level of staffing resource required for the Office of Environmental Protection to undertake its statutory functions in Northern Ireland. Now, what's interesting about that, the key to that, is that sort of the Environmental Protection Order, when it was passed through Westminster, said this is going to apply to Northern Ireland, but we're waiting for the Assembly, the Executive, actually to set in train sort of the measures will be necessary to do that. Now, I'd be very worried about that because I believe sort of that on the that's the way of it. Then sort of the Office of Environmental Protection does not have any powers to investigate anything. It doesn't have any powers to impose sanctions or anything, or to refer a matter to anybody else. It's a bystander body. Sort of, I'd like somebody to look into that. It should be, if we're going to have environmental protections, then the body supervising it must be able to protect the environment. And let me sort of finish on this one. Sort of, I'm very interested in relation to Moboy. Sort of, it's whether any effort has been made, and I'm suggesting that it should be made, to freeze the assets of people who are charged. Now, I'm not going to go into sub-judice areas, but people have been charged, and most charges are publicly made, and they've been in court. And the amount of money that we're talking about, I mentioned this before, we're talking at the very least at £40 million of our money. So this is not, it's taxpayers' money. This is not a pennies and halfpennies. Sort of I believe that money should be frozen. Those assets should be frozen, and that happens in all sorts of criminal cases without implying that anybody's guilty of anything. But when there is the prospect of looking to enforce the polluter pays principle, and we're dealing with this type of sums, then it seems to me that there should be some effort to freeze the relevant assets of the people being charged before they disappear, before they are frittered away. Because there's no point in sort of taking all this court action and discovering at the end of the day, you say, we are bent of straw, we've got no money, sorry about that, and we've lost it. That should be undertaken now, and I would like to believe that other councillors will support me in saying that.
Thank you, Eamon, for that. Alderman Ramsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Something, a very detailed report, and it's very, very clear, and a lot of study has went into it. And one of the things, that we're trying to do is save the planet, and, we need to look to also, and that's why Alderman McCready has asked for, more on this here. The environmental impact of the extra work, meaning lorries, fuel, transport, the time that it's taken, all the different aspects of what this weighing the two up against each other as regards the environment, because I believe that extra lorries, people travel will definitely have an impact on what and as Alderman Huxley said, why try and fix something that doesn't broke? We are top of the recycling, and I've spoke to Connor many a time, and explains well of how this is carried out, how it's all separated, and just basically that's another thing that would ask our officers, if they can, is to look at the environmental effect of this system as well, and that's it basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Ramsey. Councillor Carr.
Chair, I would be inclined to agree with Alderman Hussey. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Look, I have no problem with officers going to central government seeking funding for some projects, and I would also like to see all our projects brought forward, all our systems brought forward to future meetings, rather than have a discussion of this, get them all in different times, and then we can look at the best practice, the best model. But as Alderman Hussey says, we're way ahead of the pack. So don't be fixing it when it's not broke. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, for that. And I think Alderman McCready wants to come back in briefly.
Thanks.
Alderman McCready.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's mainly just to bring all that together and maybe a light proposal for the committee, if you will. And it's almost in line, but just more concise to the recommendations that I propose we endorse officers to go and seek external funding from central government for a particular project, which is not yet agreed. Secondly, is we want the 4 scenarios or the 3 remainder analysed and brought back in a similar format, which we've seen here today. And thirdly is to, by all means, consult our strategic partners in the waste domain, specifically Zero Waste Northwest. That's the proposal. I'd need a seconder, please.
Can I second that? But could I also add that an environmental impact assessment might be looked at as well?
Are you happy, Alderman McCready, that that's included in your proposal?
Yes, no issues. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. Before Adrian comes back in to address those points, would you mind if we brought maybe Conor in to address the scenarios?
You're on mute, Chair.
Conor?
Yep, thanks for that, Chair. Look, just a couple of points there to clarify. The reason we modelled scenario 4 was that was the recommendation that came out of the circular economy zero waste strategy. There were a number of scenarios identified within that, but scenario 4 was the preferred option. And that was the option was carried forward with the adoption of the strategy per se. So that is what the only one that has been modelled in this instance, as that is the preferred option. Certainly, there's scope to go back and look at all the other options and model those and bring those forward for consideration. In terms of the strategy itself, the strategy was developed, including the selection of options with our colleagues and friends on Zero Waste Northwest and Yes Waste. They weren't consulted directly in terms of this exercise. They were familiar with and were engaged in the adoption of the Circular Economy Zero Waste strategy, and this flows from that. So, as I say, we can go back and certainly look at modelling the other elements within it and variants of that in terms of bringing us to something that we can carry forward. And just to reinforce, I suppose, one point, for the published data for waste data flow and data returns for the period April to June 2020, which is whilst we were in the middle of the pandemic, as members will know, and have been rolling out brown bins. We have a recycling and composting rate of 48% for that period. Now that will have increased as we have continued to roll out an additional 20,000 bins within that period. So we would be hopeful that the figures for the summer period would be in excess of that 48%. But I just want to clarify those a few points before maybe Adrian wants to come back in and comment on the strategy per se, or on the...
Yeah. And Chair, can I just add quickly that members, you will be aware that we do work very closely with Zero Waste Northwest, and clearly we wanted to bring this report to members, and we are more than happy now to engage with the stakeholders in order to share the report with them and get their thoughts in terms of how they see this and any potential additional solutions that they would like to suggest that we can work on in partnership. So more than happy to do that, members.
Adrian, do you just want to come on before we discuss the proposal again? You want to come back in to address some of the issues?
Certainly. Following on from Conor, there's just obviously a couple of remaining points that need addressed. So in terms of developing a system to achieve your circular economy package, the main critical element of that you need to do is implement a system that is collecting the maximum amount of material per household and is also achieving the maximum amount of participation by the householders. From the study that we've done, certainly the previous piece of work suggested scenario 4 would be the best alternative option, but whenever we have assessed it, it clearly isn't matching up in its ability to actually capture the tonnage from the householders. So at the minute, whenever we assess your current system against scenario 4, your current system definitely is the preferred option and gives you the greatest opportunity of diverting waste away from disposal. That would be sort of the first point I would sort of touch upon. There was also mention of, obviously, the potential for the creation of monopolies. It would have been one of my concerns as well in terms of this move to collect material to assist 3 local companies. There's no guarantee that those companies will be there in a number of years' time. My professional opinion is that the council should focus on collecting material and ensuring it is of an appropriate quality for the market and that can be sold in the wider market and recycled and recovered. Also, by doing that, you're ensuring that you're not tied to one outlet for material, ensuring that you get best value for money and best value for the ratepayer. That's sort of the 2 main sort of the issues out of that. I think, correct me if I've missed any that are still outstanding.
No, I think that's most of them. Thank you very much for that. I just want to go back now to the proposal that was put forward by Alderman McCready, and there was an amendment by Alderman Ramsey to it. Alderman McCready, would you read out that proposal again? Because what it was, Councillor Mary Durkin has seconded, just to refresh it again.
Okay. The proposal is to endorse or approve officers to continue to seek external funding from central government. 2 is to relook over the previous 3 alternatives and conduct the same type of analysis and present it in a similar format, which we have had here today. Thirdly, is to consult with the stakeholders, just like Karen has said and is going to do anyway. And fourthly is Alderman Ramsey's amendment, which is to just look at those secondary and tertiary environmental impacts. You know, I'm not going to explain it, but
no, that's okay. That refreshes. That just refreshes.
Okay, thanks.
And Mary Durkin has seconded that, so she has. So are everyone happy to move on with that proposal? I don't see any.
Yeah, members, we're happy to take that forward.
That's okay. We move on now to item 7. Now it's for noting if somebody wants to speak on it.
Yeah. So, Chair, through you,
go ahead.
Members, if I can just quickly, because I think there is a recommendation within the report.
I thought that.
Yes, no. So members, it's really just to update you in relation to our service plan. Members, you will be aware that we had prepared the annual service plan for the full year back in February of this year. However, that wasn't brought to members. You will be aware because of the pandemic, we didn't have council meetings, and indeed, members, we were a little concerned in terms of the impact that the COVID pandemic would have on the delivery of our services and indeed the projects that we had intended to take forward. So, members, this report lays out in detail some of those issues. It lays out really how officers have worked to implement their business continuity plans to ensure that any delays, we engaged with funders to make sure that we could take projects forward. And members, it lays out for you not only some of the achievements that council achieved during the last financial year, but really, despite the pandemic, what achievements we've been able to achieve during the first 6 months of this year in the difficult circumstances that we've been working under. Members, then it goes on to outline what our service objectives are for the remainder of the 2020-21 period, members, and we are seeking to ask you to note the contents of the report and to improve our directorate delivery plan for this year. So I'm happy to take any comments or any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Karen, for that. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Karen, for the report. And on behalf of Sinn Féin, I just want to commend all the work from the Directorate, particularly over these very challenging times. And I'm happy to propose that the delivery plan. Our Chair, just in relation to the report, there's quite a lot of information contained within it, which reflects the scale of work carried out by the Directorate. But I just want to touch on a few things because it would be remiss of me not to mention the delivery of community centres. Community centres that have been long awaited. A lot of work has been done to them in terms of campaigning. They're having massive impacts in the communities that they're being developed in, and I just note I can speak in relation to the Tapple Hill Community Centre, which has only recently opened its doors to the playgroup and the youth club, and it's fantastic to see, and we very much look forward to the days whenever it can be enjoyed by the wider community. But in relation to this report reflects the work plan in the last 6 months, which we have to remind ourselves is been in the midst of a global pandemic. And I think that officers and need to be commended on the amount of work that has been done. We've seen other councils look at the reduction of services, where our council have stepped up to the mark and ensured that services continued as much as possible throughout the pandemic. So we need to acknowledge that approach and welcome it. Just in relation to delivery, and we've seen work continue on the greenways, on a place strategy, and something that I've been getting a lot of inquiries around is the shop fronts along Spencer Road and stuff. That's stuff for businesses. It's a very challenging time for businesses, particularly local independent businesses. And this sharp front initiative that has been long awaited is a glimmer of hope for the future. And I think it's something that it's encouraging to see that work is progressing. Despite the times that we're living in. I'm going to come in at this because I noted with concern the low figures in terms of progress under the heading of planning. And I'm conscious that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I know as the planning committee, something that we are immensely proud of is the way that the planning function was able to continue throughout the pandemic and throughout the restrictions, that we've continued it as much as possible. But the low numbers in terms of progress, is that anything that we should be concerned about? I note that they haven't been highlighted as red, but I just note that the time frame is tight and the progress seemed to be quite low in almost all of the headings. So I just wondered, is that something that we should be concerned about? But in relation to the delivery plan, as a party, we're supportive and we want to recognise the amount of work that has been put on by everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The next speaker is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. I firstly declare an interest on 2.5, the COVID Recovery Revitalisation Programme. I've been involved in that through my own business, but I could comment on that and congratulate our own officers on the efficiency with which they were dealing with that particular scheme. Quick query on 3.1, the fifth bullet point, with regard to Riverine, the 8.96 million, which has been secured. Am I right in thinking that funding has yet to be actually received? And is the officer aware of anything that might be in the way of council receiving that 8.96 million?
Chair, would you like me to comment on those two members' comments now before we move on?
Yep.
Yes, just members, in terms of thank the members for their comments. I think when we were pulling all of this information together, really it was quite stark. Looking back over the previous 6 months, how much has actually been delivered, and how well we've been able to deliver the services in the challenging times. And I'd like to take the opportunity to commend my senior management team and also all of the team within the Directorate. We've some 412 members of staff in the Directorate, and none of them were furloughed during this time. They all worked in a different way, but worked very, very hard. And members, I think really just in terms of Councillor Jackson, no, we don't have any concerns at the minute in terms of planning. I think there may be a little bit of an issue in terms of updating some of the information. Some of the targets are to the end of the year, and we'll ensure that they're updated and brought back before members with the relevant updates. Clearly there has been an impact mainly in planning in terms of enforcement because of the difficulty in being able to undertake site visits during the early part of the lockdown. But we have managed to actually catch up on that as best we can. And then in terms of Alderman Hussey's views in relation to Riverine, the Riverine project is now fully established. The funding is secure. Donegal are the lead partner in that, as we are with the Northwest Greenways project. We work very much in partnership. There are monthly project board meetings, and that we have now appointed a design team in terms of the Riverine project who will take the detailed design through planning and on to delivery. And certainly with every project of this huge scale, there will be challenges, clearly, but it is on track, and we are engaging with the SEUPB in terms of making sure that we're able to deliver within the timescale. It is a tight timescale, I have to note to members on that, but it's fantastic news that project is now at delivery stage, and we are moving forward with it as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
For that update, and the next speaker is Alderman McCready, and I see in the chat box, Alderman McCready, you have seconded the recommendation. Go ahead. Thanks,
Chair. Yeah, no issues. Happy to second Councillor Jackson's proposal for the recommendations. Two points, Chair, if I may. Firstly, just commendable actions from each employee within your Directorate, Karen. I think it's just testament to how you've performed as the executive team that you've outlined. So commendable, and it should be noted and should be regurgitated again in full council, and you should not be ashamed of it. Certainly not. Outstanding work throughout the pandemic, as outlined by members, which I share their views. And specifically on the item, I want to raise two aspects. The first aspect is 40% of our budgets is within your Directorate, so it should be getting the amount of scrutiny that it does deserve. And I think on the twofold, the first one is a root and branch review or efficiencies. When is the last time that has been conducted, and can we factor anything in the future? I understand that this happens monthly, biannually, as a matter of course, but it's something I'm going to bring to GNS with Alfie and his team to maybe look at it holistically within council. But the reason why I bring it up is because of COVID-19. Clearly, it has impact on services, but we've also learned lessons of how to work from home, to be more Google-esque in the way in which we operate our services, irrespective of whether we're a council or we actually are Google. So I want to see maybe an addendum to the report of how is our practices going to change in the future, and does that create any efficiencies or opportunities to extend services within the existing budget? And that's all, Chair. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Alderman McCready. Next speaker is Councillor Dobbins.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think what I was going to say has already been said. And Karen, really commend yourself and, as you said, the team behind you, because you've really stepped up to the plate, especially during COVID. And because none of you were furloughed and working behind the scenes, it is evident out there. And I do disagree with Councillor Jackson about the planning. The question, my question was with regard to enforcement. That I wouldn't like things like that to fall behind, because that seems to have a bigger knock-on effect when enforcement is not actually enforced, if you know what I mean. But look, Karen, you, the team behind you, Connor, the whole works, really commend for what you've done. Thank you.
Karen is Councillor Carr, and that's it then.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Again, thank Karen for the report. As has been already said, it's an unprecedented times. So just to congratulate her and her team around her for keeping us afloat, as you would say, for the last 6 months. But Chair, could I ask that this message has gone down to the road sweepers, the bundmen, the grave diggers, and anybody within that directorate, because the work they have done, particularly since March, under, let's say, stressful times, I think we should make sure that they're appreciated and that the message gets to them that they are appreciated. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Members, thanks for those kind comments, and we most certainly will feed that back to every single one of our members within the directorate team. You know, we do that at an officer level on a regular basis, and we will definitely convey today the thoughts and sentiments of members. And members, just to pick up on Alderman McCready's point in terms of review of the services, as you pointed out, it is something that we do very regularly, and certainly members, as you're aware, since the implementation of the new council, we've realised more than £3.1 million of efficiency services that have been put back into growth within the council coffers, if you like, and our directorate has contributed significantly to that. Over the years, we've constantly looked at ways in which we can improve the services, provide them in a more efficient way. And clearly, members, as you will be aware, because of the updates that you've been receiving from John and from Alfie, we are in unprecedented financial challenging times, and really quite a lot of the work, as well as service delivery and COVID recovery and all of the other things that our team have been doing, myself and my senior team are very, very intricately involved with Alfie and his team in terms of looking at how we potentially can respond to the financial challenges that we face. Basically, from looking at, you know, any possible efficiencies we can make in order to contribute to not raising the rates in it at all. And also, basically, you know, how, if we have no other choice but to, you know, cut back on services because of the financial situation that we're in, how we might do that in, you know, the least intrusive way as possible. Members, as you will all be aware, the vast majority of the services that we provide within the directorate are statutory services. They're the services that our residents rely on a daily and weekly basis. And indeed, you know, in a lot of areas, we are very much leading. You know, you will be aware of the numerous awards we've had for, you know, Britain and Bloom and other pride of place type initiatives. We are very keen as an officer team to keep the standards up, if you like, but we do recognise the really, really challenging, significant challenging times that we're in terms of finances. So we have been looking at possible options in terms of the budget that we face for next year. And again, they will all be included within the briefings that John and Alfie will be bringing forward to members for consideration. But certainly, members, it's something that we're mindful on a very, very daily basis of the need to make sure that our services are as lean and as efficient, as well as effective and excellent as they can be. So thank you, members.
Thank you very much for that, Karen. And as chair of the committee, Karen, I just want to be associated with the kind remarks towards yourself and all the staff in the directorate. They have done exceedingly great job, as you said, through unprecedented times. And I would like that to be noted, that they're all, you pass that message down through all the staff. And I have to say, it's a job well done, so it is. As on the recommendation, it has been proposed and by Councillor Jackson, has been seconded by Alderman McCready. So we're happy to move on to the next item, which is item number 8.
Conor will take that, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. This is to update members on the implementation of the fly tipping policy, a revised fly tipping policy that had previously been circulated by Northern Environment Agency. The report had come and the draft protocol had come in front of members on a few occasions, and there were queries, and these were fed back into the discussions with the NIA and the joint team taking this forward on behalf of the 11 district councils. The protocol serves to formalise current operating procedures, defining the roles and responsibilities of the NIA and councils in dealing with fly tipping and illegal waste deposits. Within the protocol, it sets out the roles and responsibilities. And members, if you want me to go through it, I can go through it in detail, but everything in terms of the policy and protocol is set out in the documents circulated previously. There are a couple of points, though, in terms of the revised protocol and the position of the department, specifically in terms of Article 4 and Article 5 of the Waste and Contaminated Land Order, which they want to enact and bring into force. These have been discussed by the 11 councils. And whilst there are no concerns in terms of Article 4, in terms of fly tipping and issue of fixed penalty notices, all of the councils, or certainly most of the councils, have expressed reservations in terms of Article 5 at this point in time, and require more time to discuss and agree what the implications of Article 5 for councils would be at this particular time, particularly in terms of resources. So in terms of the ask today, members, we're looking to adopt the protocol as is in terms of fly tipping, with further reports to be brought back to members in due course, setting out the issues with regard to Article 5 and some recommendations as to how those might be addressed.
Conor, for that, and Councillor Fleming has indicated that he wants to come in. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Maurice, and thanks to Conor for the report. And I'm conscious that this has been discussed by committee in previous occasions, but just to propose the recommendation in terms of the protocol and to note the ongoing work as council officers and environmental agency officials in terms of the 4 and 5 and the implications, particularly of 5. And if I could ask Conor, and I know it's a bit of an open-ended question, but is there any time frame as to when that may conclude? And is there any key issues that we should be aware of? Clarification is sought on in terms of the implication for council and for the effectiveness of the policy. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Alderman Hussey, do you want to come in as well?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Conor, for the report. Just a quick query on 2.4, Conor. NIE, responsibility for waste deposits greater than 20 cubic metres. How often have NIE been called in, and how quickly do they respond? I have my own thoughts on that, but before I leave that, could I at the same time pay credit to our own officers who deal with fly tipping? I've found in the past when I've reported fly tipping that they're on the ball later that afternoon or very latest the next day. So our own officers are to be congratulated on the speed of response. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to come in, Conor?
Yeah, if I can come back on them. In terms of Article 5, the main concern with the council is the application of the duty of care requirements. Councils are content, if I could say that, in terms of applying Article 5 to their own spheres of operation. The duty of care is much wider than that and applies to anyone transporting waste. So, for example, the concern is that we could be asked to carry out inspections and checks on third-party operators who are not providing services directly for council and so on, and the implications, the resource implications in terms of doing that. So those are the key ones. And a number of councils have raised those concerns, and a small working group of officers across a number of different councils has been assembled to look at that and to bring forward proposals in terms of how that might be addressed. There's a meeting to take place in about 2 weeks' time, following which then it's intended that proposals will be brought to all 11 councils in terms of taking this forward. And providing there's agreement on that, that will go back to the department, I would imagine at this stage sometime in January for further discussion. So that sets out, I suppose, the real concerns around that. In terms of where NIA have been involved, yep, we have been able to secure their services on a number of occasions, not as many as we would have liked, but they have responded to some of the larger scale incidents across the city and district over recent years. But again, it's a challenge just in terms of defining what's 20 metres, and this is where the protocol, certainly the fly tipping protocol, is intended to remove any uncertainty as to which organisation has responsibilities, and then if there are disputes around that, how those can be resolved. So we'd expect that end of it to work pretty well. As I say, where we have called on them in the past, they have stepped in to deal with larger accumulations of indiscriminate waste across the city and district.
Thank you, Conor, for that. And the recommendation has been proposed by Councillor Fleming. Do we have a seconder for that recommendation?
And that, Chair, David Ramsey.
Okay, Alderman Ramsey, thank you very much for seconding it. So we're happy enough. Members, do you want to take a 10 or 10-minute comfort break, or do you want to keep going on? Because I am aware we have one more item, and 10 to 14 is for information. I'm totally at your liberty. If you want to take a break, say. So Angela Dobbins has said, go on, keep her lit. So we'll move on now to item number 8. Who's taking this one?
Conor will take that, Chair.
Conor as well.
I think it's item 9, Chair. Conor, you're on mute.
Apologies, item number 9.
Yep, sorry, Chair, just wouldn't switch in from there. Item 9, Chair, the report sets out, I suppose, the key issues with regard to this, and it's the monthly Mabui update. Following from the discussion at the previous E&R committee, members had asked that specifically that the department consider the stakeholder engagement and the arrangement for stakeholder engagement and how that could be more meaningful. And they have those concerns were fed back to them. And in terms of the paper that has been submitted today, they have outlined how and where they see stakeholder engagement within this process, both in terms of the remediation phase and then in terms of the aftercare uses of the site, which is a post-remediation. Members had expressed concern that on those who would be consulted, when they would be consulted, and in terms of what those groupings would be across the city and district. And the paper set out and submitted by DERA addresses some of those concerns. So I suppose the issue today is whether members are content in terms of the engagement process as set out in the proposal by DERA, and if so, are they content to endorse that today, or if they still have further concerns, if those could be identified, and we can certainly bring them back to NIA for further consideration.
Conor, for that. The first indicated speaker is Councillor Mary Durkin.
Thank you, Chair. And this is really our first meeting now since we had our meeting with the Minister about Mabui, and the issue that was put to him there was about the public inquiry, and it's clear that the Minister doesn't have an appetite for it. But as it's becoming more and more evident, and it's already been touched upon today, this is a cross-cutting issue. This is crossing multiple departments. And so I would say this is an issue warranting executive response. The wider executive needs to be engaged here. And I would suggest on that basis that the Executive Office is written to, and relevant ministers are CC'd. Relevant ministers being Derry, DFA, Justice, Health, Communities, because there's implications for local government and community wellbeing, and Department of Finance, of course. There's also potential cross-border issues here. This adds to the cross-cutting nature. It's not about pointing fingers at individual ministers. It's about the executive as a whole taking responsibility for the remedial and strategic response. And that includes a fact-finding inquiry. You know, we haven't got a reason yet as to what has changed from March 2014, when there was cross-party support for a need for a fact-finding inquiry. You know, my boys, just one example, it's about wider policy and practice of illegal waste across the north. We need the executive to be responsible now for remedial measures and assurances and strategic recommendations. We need to avoid repeats. This can't happen again. We need to anticipate future problems and preempt these and prevent these. So I would make that proposal. And, you know, an inquiry, why too, we need the full executive on board. An inquiry will be scrutinising information from authorities in the south and also relevant UK authorities like the National Crimes Agency and the HMRC. And, you know, the minister's response at the meeting was about he's focused on looking forward. Well, I would suggest, you know, if you're going to move forward properly, then we need a full fact-finding inquiry. We need a public inquiry to properly move forward, because recommendations and remedy will be informed by a proper fact-finding exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that proposal. And I see on the chat box that Councillor Edwards has seconded your proposal. Councillor McCann wants to come in. Eamon, are you there?
Yes, I am indeed. Can you hear me? Thank you
Yes,
very
go
much
ahead.
indeed. We want to endorse everything that Mary has said, with the need for it to establish the facts in a formal way, and also to consider kind of the wider implications of all this in relation to the cross-border, the trans-boundary, as they seem to call it now, sort of remit of all this. I was a part of a delegation, not from the council. I mean, I think we've been battering the minister repeatedly over recent weeks. Mr. Putz volunteered to the gathering that he had already spoken to the Minister for the Environment in the Republic, and had discussed and more widely discussed the question of cross-border waste and the way it's being dumped. I had informed him that, I mean, you couldn't separate Maboy from sort of the whole question of waste crossing back and forth across the border. And we've got sort of a very solid evidence of that. He said that he had met with Eamon Ryan about this, and will meet him again, sort of on the phones of the next North-South Ministerial Council. And I don't think that would have happened had it not been for the delegation from the GA and also from the Council, of course. And I'm very interested in the references. I'm quite happy with what we've got so far on the question of the establishment or re-establishment of stakeholders group. And I just want to emphasise and underline again that if we're going to have, as we are going to have, a stakeholders group, it ought not to be of the great and the good. It ought to be of the people who know what's happening out there, who live around it and have been involved in the issue. For example, a stakeholders group which did not include Paul Hughes and Dicey O'Donnell from the Enoch Youth Forum, who'd be pioneers in this, the first person on the ball in relation to this issue. They should be in it. They know what they're doing, and they've got strong views on it. I also think that it's we had mentioned in the last discussions about sort of the greenery around and the blooming beauty around Derry, and that's absolutely true. We've got, we often forget, I mean, we've got 232 or 233, whatever it is, green spaces sort of in the greater Derry area, not just the council area, sort of, and some of them are just lavish sort of in their and the way they present it to us. People haven't walked around Brook Park and St. Collins Park in recent months and so on. They should do it. It's an absolute tribute to the gardeners and the other council workers who are involved in it. And sort of when we consider that we live in such a beautiful place and are surrounded by such scenic beauty, that ought to emphasise and underline for us the necessity to deal with ugliness created not by public authorities, but the ugliness created by private enterprise and criminal private enterprise here in the Derry area. So, I mean, I think I was going to make about 6 or 7 more points. Like, I've got the minutes of the meeting, which was 6 representatives of the gathering, and the minister, and the Tim Irwin, the director of resource, and Jonathan Gray of the Mooboy remediation project manager, and others. And I was going to raise a whole series of points. What I will do, sort of, if nobody objects, I mean, I've got the minutes sort of that meeting. It does cover more ground than appears to have been covered. No, nobody's fault, but it appears to have been covered sort of when the council itself met with the minister. So if nobody just what I do, rather than try to rattle through it and so on, that I will forward that. I've got it in electronic form, and I will forward that to all members of the council. If anybody doesn't want to receive it, they can tell me, and I'll take their name off the list. Other than that, sort of, I propose to do that.
Thank you, Eamon, for that, and welcome that you're going to forward that information to us. The next speaker is Councillor Paul Fleming.
Thanking you again, Chair. Thanks, Maurice. And obviously the recent meeting with the Minister covered a number of points, but again, I would concur in terms of the disappointment with regard to movement on a public inquiry. There is a number of different aspects to this, and as I say, remediation, and then obviously the aftermath of that and bringing it back into community use. But there still is the necessity in a lot of people's minds for a public inquiry, and also in terms of the lessons being learned for future safety of people, and obviously in terms of rivers and our drinking water. So the public inquiry should and still does remain a priority for Sinn Féin. The other aspects too also are important in terms of the remediation of the site, and we've had a stakeholders group for a period of time, and it has a fairly broad representation, and certainly what's put before is today seems to incorporate that, where there will be stakeholders from right across the board, including the community and including people who are across the detail of this. So in the sense of what has been put forward today, we would be supportive of. Thank you.
Are you proposing that, Paul? Are you making the recommendation?
If it takes a proposal, yes.
That's okay. That's okay.
I second that.
Eamon McCann seconded. Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Just keep it brief. It's just to support Councillor Barry Durgan on her proposal. She's 100% right. It is very disappointing, and I believe it's the only thing that we can do now is have it. So I'll be supporting her proposal. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, for that. So it has been proposed by Councillor Fleming and seconded by Councillor McCann. So we're happy to move on. The next 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14 are for information, but I have a number of speakers here who want to come in on items 10 and 11. So the first one on item 10 is Councillor McHugh.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right? Hello?
Yeah, can hear you, Councillor McHugh.
Thank you. Just regarding item 10, I would just like to record, obviously I welcome the fact that the work is ongoing to tackle the invasive species, particularly the giant hogweed. It's good to see that work is continuing, even though it's tricky work that needs to be undertaken. I'd also like to just record my disappointment regarding the work at St. Mulls Riverside Walk being postponed. Obviously, through reading the report, it was unavoidable, and it probably does make more sense that the work at Claudy be completed before we can move then to St. Mulls. Members will be aware that the work at St. Mulls or the issue at St. Mulls has been something that has been raised continuously by councillors over several years, and it's a matter of regret that having the necessary permissions in place and everything ready to go, that we weren't able to undertake that work when the opportunity arose. So, as the report states, I think it's paramount that that work does be undertaken as soon as possible and as soon as the timeline permits again early next year. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McHugh, Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Chair, thanks for letting me in. And I do, on item 10, I do welcome the progress in terms of the Strabane River Walkway and dealing with the knotweed. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the budget there, Chair, £5,000 per year, I'm wondering, is there any other options? And maybe officials could update us on that if there's any other options being considered, because £5,000, it says it will take a number of years to resolve. So that's probably the first question, Chair. And secondly, with regards to private land, I know that section 3.5 mentions that Derry have enforcement responsibility. I would like to propose, Chair, that council write to Derry and just to ask them about what enforcement activity they're doing in our council area in terms of invasive species. And this is in relation to myself and Alderman Hussey has visited St. Mulls, and we've seen firsthand that there's a lot of what is giant hogweed in the wider St. Mulls area, which is on private land, and there doesn't seem to be much being done about it. Chair, so I'd like to make that proposal. In terms of item 11, Chair, I am again disappointed that the Mornside Walk and St.
Chair,
Mulls
hold on. We'll take item 10 first, and I'll come back for item 11.
No problem, Chair.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair.
Item 10.
Yes, item 10. Just to reiterate what Councillor Edwards and Councillor McHugh are saying there with regard to invasive species. Myself and Councillor Edwards, along with community representative, were on site in the St. Mulls area in the region of the railway embankment and beyond, and witnessed the presence of invasive species there, which seems to be on private land. So under 3.5 of the report, it would be important to contact the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs with regard to that and ask that they do pursue the powers that they have available. And in that regard, I'm content to satisfy or to second the proposal coming from Councillor Edwards. Thank you, Chair.
You, Chair, members, we're
Councillor
happy to
Hussey.
take that forward.
Happy enough to take that forward, Karen. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on now to item 11. Councillor McHugh first again.
Chair, I had already spoken item 11 there. It was regarding the walkway at St.
Sorry. My apologies. Councillor Edwards, my apologies for not allowing you. I didn't sitting here maybe half sleeping, but my apologies. Councillor Edwards, go ahead on item 11.
No problem, Chair. Apologies for jumping the gun there on that. Again, Chair, at this point, the Mornside Walk has been delayed, given that we have a lack of outdoor green space across the wider Derry area. I think it is important that it is upgraded and that it's brought back to a relevant level of safety for users. And during the week as well, Chair, I've been meeting with council officials about extending the walkway, looking at greenways and walkways for the wider area. But that's a discussion for another day, Chair. But yep, disappointed, but hopefully the works can be completed early next year. Thank you, Chair.
Alderman Hussey, item 11.
Thank you, Chair. And as Councillor McHugh has pointed out, this is an ongoing festering issue, particularly in the Cyan Mills area. I think we're looking back at the 2016 floods on this, when the part of the embankment was washed away, causing a very serious health and safety issue along the Riverside Walk there. It is extremely disappointing to hear that we're now going to have to wait right through until next spring because of various restrictions placed on us by others. The rationale and actually getting started and being at the point of starting and then being found, no, sorry, you can't do it. I can understand water levels will be high over the winter period, but I would certainly anticipate and hope that come April, the men and machines are there on site addressing what has been a festering issue in the area for some long time. Thank you, Chair.
Karen, do you want to come out on that?
Yeah, Chair. I've just Frank Morrison's on the line, and maybe I think he would like to update members. We do share your frustration in terms of this one, and certainly we will do whatever we can to get it back on track as quick as possible. Frank, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, Karen. As I say, really fundamentally, the issue with this was that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, although the works were tendered in plenty of good time, so that the works could have been carried out the most advantageous time over the summer, when water levels would have been at their lowest. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to appoint the contractor at that time to enable him to be on site and carry out the work at that time. So by the time we were in a position to appoint them and they were ready to mobilise and order materials and get to site, unfortunately, the passage of time had marched on, and we were moving into the late summer, early autumn, and as a result, water levels were unfavourable. He was unwilling to enter them, and for two reasons: for the health and safety of his own men, and then his fear was that if he'd started work on site, there was no guarantee that he could get it completed within the absolute deadline set by the Rivers Agency. So, as Karen has said, and as intimated in the paper there, at the end of this prohibition period in which work can be carried out in the river concludes in the spring, then subject to favourable water levels, the contractor has assured us he will be on site and complete the works and at no additional cost to council.
Very much, Frank, for that. That's all the items that have been indicated to speak under open for information. So could I have a proposer that we go on to confidential?
Chair, I'd requested just to raise an item of AOB, if you'd permit me.
Yes, before we go on to confidential, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to, and I understand, I don't want to hold debate around Christmas lighting and stuff, but I was led to believe that there was a Christmas feature to be implemented in Killen Village and in Cleater Village as part of this year's festivities. I understand the one in Killen has been erected, but I'm just wondering, is there an update on where things are at with regards to the one at Cleater? Thank you, Chair.
Who wants to come back on that?
Can Connor come in? Connor, you know that, or maybe we might need to come back to you on it.
Chair, if you don't mind, I'm happy enough if I can speak to Connor directly on it, or if he wants to update us now, that's no problem.
Chair, no, I need to speak to Councillor McHugh directly on it after the meeting and update him.
That's grand, thank you.
Happy enough, Councillor McHugh?
Chair.
Could we have a proposer now that we go on to confidential?
Opposed, Chair.
Angela Dobbins. Could I have a seconder?
Seconded.
David Ramsey.
Okay, can we...
Karen, just let us know when we're in confidential.
Yeah, I think we've got our IT people on the line, and if they can just maybe put it on the chat box or let us know when